I will call this meeting of the Clackamas County Commission to order and ask if you would join us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Mic's not on?
No, they're on. I don't have a mic. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
They're all on. I already tested them. I'll just turn her up.
I'll double check on this. I don't think mine is on.
Doesn't sound like it.
Well, I'll come back tomorrow then.
Try it now.
Hello? No?
There's a little
Try
bit.
it now.
Hello? Oh, there we go.
Yay.
Hello.
There we go.
Hello.
Perfect. First, I want to say thank you for taking the time to be with us. And as you can see from the agenda, we have two scheduled segments for citizen comments. The first is our regularly scheduled citizen communication, and the second is under discussion items. And just to remind you, to be sure you're on the right blue card pile, because I have two little piles, citizen communication is for statements about items that are not on today's agenda. And people who want to speak on a discussion topic that is on today's agenda will be asked to wait and speak about that as it comes up in the agenda so we can hear everyone on that topic. So if you want to speak, be sure to fill out a blue card and note what you're wanting to speak about. And give it to Mary, and she will, as you can see, run it right up here. So with that, I also need to let everyone know that Commissioner Damon is not here today because she's on vacation on the East Coast. And so the four of us are it today. And and also that for the Housing Authority consent agenda, Erica Allison, who's our Housing Authority board member, will not be here today. So for this first item, we are sitting as the Housing Authority board, and I will ask the clerk to read the Housing Authority consent agenda by title.
Okay. The Housing Authority consent agenda. Approval of a contract with A1 Quality Construction to remove and replace flooring at Housing Authority public housing units. Approval of a contract with Reno Calavan to provide legal services to the Housing Authority of Clackamas County. Approval of a contract with Daigle Law Office to provide legal services to Housing Authority of Clackamas County. And that's it.
Okay. I would entertain a motion to approve.
Chair Lehan, I move we approve the Housing Authority consent agenda.
Second.
It's been moved by Commissioner Leininger and seconded by Commissioner Bernard that we approve the Housing Authority consent agenda. Is there any discussion on any items? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Passes 4-0. And that brings us to our presentation item today. And we have a presentation of the National Association of Counties 2011 Achievement Awards, and Tracy Moreland is here to explain that.
Thank you. Good morning, Commissioners. Tracy Moreland from Public and Government Affairs here today to help recognize staff from departments that received a NACO Achievement Award for 2011. It's always my pleasure to help do that. NACO each year gives achievement awards recognizing innovative county programs across the country that contribute to or enhance county government. This year, Clackamas County received 3 awards from NACO, and I can just briefly describe each of the 3 programs and then ask staff to come up front for a photo with the board and take it from there. The first program is the Mick and Narrow comic and activity books generated through the Clackamas County Sheriff's Office. In 2009, Clackamas County Sheriff's Office created the Mick and Narrow comic and activity book franchise in an effort to engage today's children who are often quite media savvy on topics such as pedestrian and traffic safety, drug abuse, underage drinking, and other traditional public safety messages for kids. More than 125,000 copies have been printed to date. They've been distributed free of charge through Sheriff's Office programs that are geared toward young people, as well as many other groups and organizations serving that same demographic throughout Clackamas County and Oregon. The books have largely been paid for by grants as well as private businesses. The second program is Energy Efficiency on Main Street. Energy Efficiency on Main Street is a cooperative program of the Clackamas County Main Street Program and our Office of Sustainability. The program is designed to recommend and fund energy efficiency upgrades for businesses in Clackamas County Main Street districts. The program offers technical assistance, free energy assessments, resource information, and incentives and rebates for energy upgrades and improvements. Energy Efficiency on Main Street is also funded by a grant. While Main Street itself is a national program, Energy Efficiency on Main Street is unique to Clackamas County. In fact, Oregon Main Street is looking at it as a model to perhaps expand the program throughout the state. And the third program is Technology for Teaching. Technology for Teaching is a nonprofit established by Clackamas County to provide affordable and sustainable ways to make computers and other equipment available to schools and or other organizations. And when computers and other technology are no longer used by the county or valuable enough to be resold or traded in, Technology Services staff processes and transfers items to Technology for Teaching for distribution. And the non-viable equipment is then sent to a certified recycling center. And also, Technology Services gained another recognition this year. Clackamas County was listed 8th by the Center for Digital Government in the 2011 Digital County Survey, which recognizes leading examples of counties using information and communication technology. The Center for Digital Government and the Digital Communities Program is a partner of NACO, and they identified the best electronic practices among counties nationwide, regardless of their size. So for our population size, we were ranked 8th in the nation, which is very noteworthy. So these are the 3 county programs. Thank you. And now if the board has any questions or comments, or we can ask our staff to come forward for their photo.
Any questions?
No questions.
I think this is great work. I know that we have a lot of people here waiting to testify, so I'm thrilled to go ahead and do this photo so we can move on to public comment. Thanks.
All right.
Okay. So we'll call up the staff for the Mick and Narrow comic and activity books.
Why don't we have them all, have everybody come up that's,
Okay.
that's
Yeah, let's-
part of the award thing.
Yeah.
We can do that more quickly.
They do want to do separate.
I like the dog.
That's near.
Photo right here. There you go. Big smiles. 1, 2, 3. Beautiful. One more. 2, 3. Okay. Everyone look over this way, please. Oh, the certificate, yes. Okay, here we go. Everyone right over here. Here we go. 1, 2, 3. Beautiful.
We have a copy of it. This is energy efficiency on Main Street.
Okay, here we go. Over here. Here we go. Over here. Over here, everyone. Big smiles. Right here. 1, 2, 3. Beautiful. One more. There we go. 1, 2, 3. Perfect. Thank you.
By the way, these are national recognitions from National Association of Counties, so it's not just an Oregon award.
So thank you very much and for helping recognize these staff and their achievements this year.
Okay, thank you. We're just trying to move along since we have a lot of people who would like to speak today. So that brings us to citizen communication, and remember these are for items that are not on the agenda. And the first card I have on citizen communication is Bob Shannon.
Are you bringing them up two at a time?
Yeah, I might as well bring up two at a time for these as well. We'll do that generally speaking. But so I have Bob Shannon and Richard Langdon.
My name is Bob Shannon. I'm out of Damascus. Morning, Commissioners and
3 minutes.
Consular.
Yeah,
Well, I'm actually,
yeah. You
I'm
need to
not
give
with
your.
it.
Excuse me. I should have said we need to have your name and address for the record, and then
Oh, okay.
and I won't have to say it every time. And then you have 3 minutes.
all right, Bob Shannon, 17421 Southeast Vogel Road, Damascus, Oregon.
Thank you.
All right. Well, there's two subjects, if I can get it in here. Well, I'm against that light rail thing, too. I'm not with it. Well, I'm with these people, but I'm concerned about this Vogel Road where I live on. Last year, one of the city engineers told me they were going to put a seal coat on the road, and they never done it, but the amount of traffic we have on there is tremendous anymore. See, it goes up the hill and hits Foster Road into Damascus, if anybody's familiar with that. And also, the other plan is, I guess they want to go across from, I guess it would be Vogel, and then go across country to Ritchie Road where there's a school there. But I thought, being it's in Multnomah County, it'd be better if they'd put a light down at 172nd and Foster there. They'd have to widen the intersection, and then one right at Ritchie Road, where the school is. Most of these people are going to Gresham. And of course, that's Multnomah County, you know. But I don't understand that it's between Multnomah County and Gresham if they want to expand that area. Pleasant Valley, I guess they call it. And is there any other questions? But I would hope they could do something about our road anyway. We've been waiting a long time.
Okay.
What's the name of the road?
Vogel,
Vogel
Vogel. It runs from 172nd up the hill to Foster Road.
Okay.
Okay.
You want to respond?
Oh,
to
we'll look into the status of that. It may be a city road. We'll find out what the sealing status is on Vogel Road.
Okay. We'll look into it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
My eyes are older than I think. Good morning. My name is Richard Langdon, Portland, Oregon. The first thing I'd like to bring to the attention of the commissioners is that my viewers at home, I've discovered I have viewers at home. A lot of them are getting in touch with me, which is great. Is that the code violation still exists on the one property with the mobile food carts in Clackamas County. So the selective enforcement of a code and the targeting by Clackamas County staff still exists and continues to this day. Please do something about your staff. Sooner the better. We'd appreciate it. Thank you. I was remiss last week. Commissioner Jamie Damon's not here right now, but hopefully she'll watch this on TV on vacation, or maybe not. Vacation's a good time. She is also on board with the rewrite of ZDO 1102 along with Commissioner Paul Savas. She'd like to make it clear in the code what needs to go through design review and what does not, and what applies and what doesn't, so that we don't have any confusion there. I would like to thank her for her common sense, her integrity, and her courage. We do appreciate it. I'll thank her next week as well when she returns. And with that said, my viewers at home have been watching and have been excited to see what their commissioners are like. That's a good thing. I'm glad to see them getting involved in government. They pointed out to me that at least one commissioner believes that the county staff, the county staff does not have the ability to fabricate codes at their will. And they asked me if they could hear the words in ZDO 1102 once again, so they could decide for themselves. So I thought I'd read ZDO 102 to the folks at home, and then other folks can decide for themselves if the staff has the ability to fabricate codes when they want, about what they want. That needs to be changed. This is an excerpt from ZDO 1102. Design review applies to all development, redevelopment, expansion, and improvements. Here's the second half of this sentence. It's very important. And to other uses as required by the planning director, the hearings officer, or the Board of County Commissioners. Let me say that second sentence again. Or to other uses as required by the planning director, the hearings officer, or the Board of County Commissioners. That is the active statement in ZDO 1102. Folks at home, I hope you can get that, get back in touch with me. Let me know how you feel about ZDO 1102, and if that says to you that the staff can fabricate any code at any time they wish. It's important that we change that. I understand we're working on it. Thanks for your interest in government, and get back with me on that, and thanks, commissioners. Good day.
Thank you. The next card I have is Les Poole. And Eugene Schoenheit. So we'll have two people come up so that we're on deck.
Good morning, Chair Lehan, Commissioners. Les Poole, 15115 Southeast Lee, Milwaukee, 97267. Just want to comment about the fact that we've got a good-sized crowd here today. A year ago, I visited the Commission on several occasions and discussed hopefully fulfilling a campaign promise made by former Chair Peterson. And that was the promise that we'd work on changing the meeting times so we could see more citizen communication, more citizen input. And I wrote myself a note that after the budget process in July of this year, I would make a brief appearance and encourage that to be put on the agenda in the future. Obviously, goal one is citizen input. And we've got a lot of folks here today, but I would just about bet you a cup of coffee that as the process goes on, a lot of them won't be able to attend or stay as involved as we'd all like to see. So let's think about that come fall time. Citizen participation was best exemplified in the recent vote in Damascus for the comprehensive plan, regardless of how you felt or the people in Damascus felt. And that citizen participation is what put the Selwood Bridge fee on the ballot, and it was soundly defeated. So we need, more than ever, we need the Commission to hear from the public. There is a huge silent majority that I'm communicating with all the time. Thank you.
Hello, I'm Eugene Schoenheit, 13780 Southeast Fern Ridge, Milwaukee. I'm here to talk about the right to vote, and I'm requesting the right to vote on the construction of funding of Milwaukee Light Rail. And I'm just putting that to you, Commissioners, because the public is out there and they want the vote. I'm going to pick on Ann this morning, and just because of a couple of comments I made, but I think this applies to the county commissioners in general. At the State of the County program on February 22nd, Ann said, would you support, it was asked, would you support a vote on Milwaukee Light Rail? And your answer was, I think that the public decides that it needs to, I'm going to try this again. I think if the public decides that it needs to let us know that they don't like something that we're doing, we need to listen, and I am not unwilling to have a public vote on a number of issues. And then, well, the question is, what about urban renewal and Milwaukee Light Rail? You went on to say putting it, or light rail, on the ballot would be fine to have the public vote on it because this is a democracy. If they don't decide it's a good idea, that's okay because this is a democracy. We are always interested in what the community has to say. We are here to work with, listen to, and represent our residents. Well, Ann, are you listening? Paul Savas made a motion on July 8th, and you basically just sat there. Later, you made a quote from Sir Edward Burke of England, and I wanted to say, this is America, and we vote in America. When are you going to represent Americans, people in Clackamas County? You said you would do on February 22nd. That's what I have to say.
Thank you.
The next card I have is for John Ludlow.
John Ludlow, 29173 Southwest Courtside Drive, Wilsonville, Oregon. As some of you know, I was the mayor of Wilsonville at one time, 2 removed from Charlotte. I unfortunately signed urban renewal into being for $8 million. It's now ballooned to $150. I listened with interest with a quote from Charlotte recently. The way I've worked with urban renewal all these many years is, of course, that urban renewal needs to generate some money. The projects are supposed to generate additional assessed value so that we can get some money coming back. So you have to be careful, very careful, about doing things like building a park. Now, sometimes a park could result in money if it allowed a housing development to go in that couldn't otherwise or wouldn't otherwise. But just to provide a park because you like one is not probably going to generate much in the way of increased tax assessed value so that you get more revenue. Let me read to you from the City of Wilsonville website on urban renewal. While Charlotte was mayor and on the council, only one of these on the council, acquired in 1993 a $1.5 million park. Did a $2.2 million artificial turf improvement at Wilsonville High School. Erected a $250,000 concrete welcome to Wilsonville signs. Erected a water feature and walkways, picnic area in a park, 2005, $2 million. Wilsonville High School again, 2005, $1.1 million, again for turf. Marassi Park and park design. This is a park with fountains, $6.1 million. Then they bought the property where City Hall would go on, $1.8 million. Then built City Hall, $10 million. Then acquired some buildings in 11 acres, 2 buildings of 8,000 square feet for $4.1 million. All of these improvements are on public property. No tax assessment. So you got a little bit of double speak here. You got to be careful. Yeah, very careful. And this is improvements for nothing. It didn't mean a new subdivision. And it's doublespeak, you guys. Commissioner Bernard, last time I was here, exclaimed in the newspaper that you pay your taxes in Villebois just like everybody else pays. Yes, you pay the same rate we do. That's a gift to you. Of $143 million of assessment in Villebois, $130 million doesn't go towards our basic services. That tax on that $140 million each year is siphoned away, and the rest of us in town, by the way, Commissioner Bernard, we contribute towards that. We pay an equalization fee. So there's doublespeak going on. You know who's doing it. Good luck on the next election.
The next item is that we have, that's all that I have under citizen communication, by the way, which brings us to our discussion items. We have two discussion items today. One is under Department of Emergency Management, and and we have with us today Dana Robinson. No, Terry.
Terry Poet.
Sorry, reading the wrong thing.
So did I.
That's the next item.
Thank you.
Good morning, Commissioners. I'm Terry Poet with the Department of Emergency Management. I'm here for a very brief discussion today about the 2011 Intra-County Mutual Aid Agreement. That has been modified, and we want to talk about that just for a few minutes. The original agreement was ratified in 2006, and now it's been updated to clarify the terms and the conditions. And the agreement establishes a mutual aid network for Clackamas County government and countywide agencies to share resources during an emergency. The provision includes personnel, which would be maybe certified behavioral health specialists, environmental health inspectors, building inspectors. We know in a disaster there's going to be a lot of needs. The personnel will remain the employees of the county, and all of the terms have been established in this agreement for that use. There may be equipment that would be requested or that we may need from another jurisdiction, and this partnership really works efficiently for backhoes, dump trucks, that kind of thing. Supplies and materials in that category may be something like sandbags, and we see that on a regular basis when we have our winter storms. The execution of the agreement does not create any obligation for the response on the participants' end. It really depends on the availability of the resources. An example might be a request for a behavioral health specialist because of the great impacts and the need for victim assistance. So a request could come to the county, but those agreement being in place, it would be really easy to have those terms and get expeditious assistance out. If we're unable to fulfill the request from a jurisdiction, then we would elevate that to the state of Oregon, and they could help us provide those resources. So there's a lot of benefits to this agreement. It pre-establishes the conditions for the resource use and the terms for reimbursement. That's huge. The terms for indemnification and limitation of liabilities are outlined, and it expedites the deployment of those critical resources. So Emergency Management would like to request today that the board sign the agreement and the modification, and other parties are signing on to that. So I think it's a win-win for us.
Okay. I would entertain a motion.
I move we approve the agreement. I move we approve the intragovernmental mutual aid agreement modification as presented by staff.
I'll second that.
It's been moved by Commissioner Leininger and seconded by Commissioner Savas that we approve the intra-county mutual aid agreement modification. Is there any discussion?
I think this is wonderful and important, and as we sit with 100 people in the audience, I just love to suggest that in the future, if there's a topic on which we know there will be a lot of people waiting to testify, I think it would be great to have that be at the very beginning of the agenda, because these are people who've taken time out of their days, and so if in the future we could try to sequence things in that order, I think that would be really respectful of people's time. But I certainly think this is important, so thank you.
Thank you for your proactive actions.
Yeah. Wait, we didn't vote for it, though. We think it's a great idea, but we didn't vote for it. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. It passes 4-0. It is an important mutual aid agreement for emergency services. And that brings us to, under county administration, the discussion of the intergovernmental agreement for Portland-Milwaukee Light Rail. And I believe we have Dan Chandler here, or someone, to give us a little background on this item. And Stephen Madcore, County Council.
We don't know.
Well, this is a staff presentation, and remember that this is televised, and a lot of people like to get a little bit of background. I can ask how long are we thinking? Usually these only take about 5 minutes.
That's correct. I believe that at least my portion, board has heard most of this before. I just want to go over it briefly. A few minutes.
Yeah,
Mr. Madcore will
just
have some
background
additional
information that we need and that the viewing public needs in order to put everything in a context.
Good morning, Dan Chandler with County Administration. As I just said, I think the board's had plenty of presentations on this, so I'm going to be very quick about going through the background and the status of the agreement to lead into Mr. Madcore's presentation and his analysis. This began in the early 1990s as the North-South Light Rail project. Originally envisioned would go from town center to Milwaukee, from Milwaukee up through Kenton to Vancouver. Oregon voters approved it in 1994, and in 1995, the Clark County voters rejected the Clark County portion, so that particular project didn't go forward. In 1996, North-South Light Rail was part of a statewide transportation project. I believe it was about half of a $750 million measure that was defeated by the voters. In 1998, metro area voters rejected a bond measure 52% to 48% for a town center Milwaukee downtown interstate rail package, essentially the North-South Light Rail project without the Clark County portion. Following on that 1998 vote, I think regional partners started to evaluate other transportation options for I-205 and the Milwaukee-Oregon City corridors. The initial plan there was for busway and bus rapid transit. There was there were a number of requests from the community and a lot of input in favor of light rail, so light rail was added back into the mix in 2001. Clackamas County actions on the matter began, formal board actions anyway. The first one was in 2003. As part of the region, regional governments endorsed a locally preferred alternative that included what is now the Green Line as Phase 1, I-84 to Town Center. And Phase 2 was the Portland-Milwaukee Light Rail project. There was a public hearing, and the Board of County Commissioners sitting at that time voted unanimously in favor of the locally preferred alternative. In 2008, between 2003 and 2008, there was, again, continued community input, particularly from businesses, that led to a change in the alignment towards the current alignment. Again, the Board of Commissioners at that time held a public hearing and issued a board order approving that changed alignment. In 2010, the board held another public hearing, different board, unanimously approved this intergovernmental agreement we're talking about today to provide $25 million toward Portland-Milwaukee Light Rail. The county's funding obligation is about 1.7% of the total. It's contingent upon approval of a full funding grant agreement by the Federal Transit Administration. TriMet has submitted that application, and it is expected that the FTA will make a decision on it in March of 2012. So the county's obligation would in no event come into play before that. I want to note that under the IGA, that funding obligation isn't contingent on any specific source of funds, including a new urban renewal district. There's no mention in the agreement of a specific source of funds. I want to note that each of those county actions was taken with a full public hearing, with public testimony. Each of them over time was a unanimous vote. And in each case, it was a different Board of Commissioners approving the action. In fact, there was only one overlap for one commissioner over that entire time. It was 9 different Clackamas County commissioners sitting over a long period that all voted in favor of this alignment and project over time. I guess I already talked about the timing of the full funding grant agreement. I'm going to talk briefly about these intergovernmental agreements for transportation funding. Since the 80s, there's been a transfer of funding responsibility for transportation projects. Beginning with the Reagan administration, that funding responsibility devolved down to the states and local governments. And most local projects now are partnerships. They're funding partnerships, and they're generally documented by these kinds of agreements. Clackamas County has been the beneficiary of the $100 million figure I just learned this morning is way low in funds distributed from other entities to us under these kinds of IGAs. The Sunrise project in particular, over $100 million in other money that came with a small Clackamas County share. So your staff believes it's important that the county consider the county's ability to benefit from those future agreements when it considers what, if any, actions it might take under this agreement. And with that, as I promised, I would be short, and I'm done. I'm going to hand that off to Mr. Madcore now. Thank you.
Thank you, Dan. Stephen Madcore, County Counsel. This board has asked that I research a couple legal questions. The first question was the viability and the enforceability of the Portland-Milwaukee Light Rail Agreement that this board entered into, or a board entered into in February of last year. I have reviewed that agreement, and I conclude that that is a binding, enforceable agreement, and the basis of my opinion is that the agreement is clear on its face, it is unambiguous, it meets all the terms necessary to contract. We have it in writing. It has obligations. The county's obligation is what Mr. Chandler described, $25 million in cash or like-kind contribution towards the project itself. It has terms, durations, payment due in September 2012 with a one-year option after that at 5%. It is signed by the parties to be bound on behalf of the board by Commissioner Leininger, on behalf of TriMet, Fred Hansen. The fact that this board is of a different composition than the board that was sitting in February 2010 is of no consequence. This contract is equally binding on this board. Be advised that what the board did in entering into a contract with TriMet is not unlike what this board will be doing today when it agrees to the consent agenda items, which include up to 20 different contracts that this board or subsidiaries of this board, county departments, enter into with a variety of other governments, nonprofits, and private entities. Earlier today, you approved of 3 contracts with law firms, consistent with that. This contract with TriMet also has an implied or an express covenant of good faith, which means that the county will make its best efforts to perform under the terms of the contract itself. Those are obligations in the contract. Performance will be the payment of the $25 million or a like-kind contribution. Failure to comply with that term would be deemed a material breach of contract, which would expose the county to liability. I am not of any opinion whatsoever whether or not TriMet will enforce that or seek remedies against us. Rest assured, though, I do know that they would be well within their legal rights to do that. So in summary, the contract that was signed a year and a half ago is indeed binding and valid and enforceable to this board. The board has also asked that I explore whether or not that contract and the board's actions in that contract is subject to upset by voter initiative or petition or referendum. And my answer to that is no, it is not. Oregon's Constitution provides for initiative and referendum in matters dealing with legislation. When a board enters into a contract, it is administrative, executive. It is not legislation. You are not making law. You are implementing a policy which has been established by prior boards to endorse the Milwaukee-Portland light rail alignment and to secure its funding. What the prior board did was administrative, executive in nature, which is not subject to initiative or referendum attack. If it were, every contract, every governing body would enter into would be subject to voter approval. That would bring government to a halt, and the Oregon courts, the Supreme Court, the appellate courts, have all said that to do so would be an abuse of the initiative process and the referendum process. So I conclude that the contract is binding, contract is enforceable, and it is not subject to upset or termination or repealing by way of initiative or referendum. I hope that answers the board's question to their satisfaction. If you have any questions for me, I'd be happy to try to answer them.
No. Commissioners, do you have any questions?
No, thank you.
I'm going to have to call you out of order here. We can't have discussion from the audience. You'll all have a chance to speak when we get to that portion of time. Right now, I'm asking the commissioners if they have questions of council.
I do. And I just really would like to ask the audience, regardless of your position on this, to be orderly and be courteous and polite and let everyone speak in order. So I please ask that. I believe I fully understand what you have, what county councils mentioned, and if indeed it appears that that's accurate, my role, I think, is to do the best I can with the hand we have dealt. And I want to draw attention to, if you have the contract, to Section 1.2, 1.3, and 1.4. And in Section 1.2, 1.3, and 4, what I read into that in this contract, and again, I think my responsibility is to everyone in the county, that it does. I don't disagree that it binds the county to the $25 million, but I think I asked in our work session here a few weeks ago, does this contract bind TriMet or the project to deliver the project, basically, which is Attachment E, the scope of work and what that consists of. And as I read 1.2 and 1.3 and 1.4, and I ask county's opinion on this, it looks as though there's many mechanisms in there that if funding falls short, if there is any kind of interference not under control of the Clackamas County or TriMet, and there's a rollback or a change, that they have the ability, really, not Clackamas County, to make a change or roll back the project. I know there's some people in this room that I recognize that truly want this project to happen, and I think they want it to happen in their community in the way that they envision. And I am concerned that, and again, we're committed to $25 million, and if that indeed is the fact, then I want to see the project fully developed. This doesn't give me that security, despite what was spoken to when I asked that question here a few weeks ago when we had a work session on this. So, do you see that as that they indeed can amend the contract as they see fit?
I wouldn't necessarily characterize it that way, Commissioner Savas. I would say that there are a variety of contingencies necessary for this contract to be completed, to be performed as anticipated. It's primarily based on the availability of federal funding. The inability of TriMet to secure federal funding would allow Clackamas County's obligation to essentially be waived and non-existent. We wouldn't have to pay $25 million if TriMet didn't secure their funding. There might be we might be on the hook for some termination costs, for some project design and development costs associated with that. That remains to be seen, though. But yes, there are conditions precedent, as the term of art used in law, prior to the performing, that need to be satisfied prior to the performing of the contract.
What troubles me is that I don't see, really a mechanism where there is an opportunity for a negotiation, and maybe that's somehow implied, but I would rather see some kind of a mechanism in here that gives us, the Board of County Commissioners, a real opportunity to reconsider the project to make sure that our goals or aspirations are met, because we're bound by the $25 million, but the party, TriMet, is not bound for the deliverables as much as I'd really like to see it. So is there a way that we can either amend this or include language that secures that
Contracts
in a more meaningful way?
Contracts can be amended with the mutual consent of the parties. Both sides would have to agree to enter into it. The county is not in a position to unilaterally amend this agreement.
But the opposite party somewhat is.
They're not allowed either. They can't say all of a sudden pay $30 million.
Okay.
I mean, the contract was negotiated in good faith by the parties, with the assistance of counsel, be advised as well. So this contract is confined to what is on its pages in writing. If it were to be amended, it would have to be amended in writing, and it would have to be amended with the mutual consent of TriMet and the Board of County Commissioners.
So in that instance, then, if there was, let's say, a $300 million shortfall, and the project's rolled back out of, let's say, out of Oak Grove into Milwaukee, let's say, because of funding or something like that, we have an opportunity to negotiate that along with the financial commitment, or whatever we mutually agree upon, is what you're saying.
A substantial change in the objectives and the expectations of the parties would result in an opportunity to renegotiate the terms of the contract. I would think that's a fair assessment.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Other questions? You have a question? Okay. Thank you for the report. And with that, we will move on to public comment on this item. And first off, I want to go through a little bit of the what we're about with doing this, and say that I have about 40 some cards here of people to speak. So as you can understand, if everyone can do the math, if everyone uses the full 3 minutes, then we're here until for about 2.5 hours. So. To the degree that you can, please be brief. Try not to repeat what others have said. You can come up and indicate in a brief way that you agree with this speaker or that speaker. And if you can't stay for some reason and you have written comments, you can turn those into the clerk, and at the end of the public testimony, those will be the major points of any written testimony that hasn't been heard will be summarized by county staff so that everyone can hear it. And then, of course, we will get the full testimony. Likewise, if you have brought testimony from someone else that you want read into the record, you can give that to Mary. If it's going to take more than your 3 minutes to cover, give that to Mary. Those will also be summarized at the end of the actual testimony. And I was also going to ask my colleagues on the board to try not to ask questions or comment in between speakers so that we can spend our time listening to the people who are here. Let me see what other notes I had. Please, throughout this, be civil and respectful. All input and perspectives are welcome. please keep your comments to ideas and issues, not people or personalities. And please do not disrupt the meeting, either as a speaker or as a member of the audience, so that we can hear from all sides. And anyone who does disrupt the meeting or is out of order will be asked to leave. With that, the first, as is ordinarily the case on public testimony, we usually invite we give preference, or what do you call that? Well, whatever. Call up first. Elected officials. And I only have one that I'm aware of, Greg Chamoff, so I will call him up as an elected official. Do I have any other elected officials here today?
I'm going to put the screen up.
Yeah. Okay.
Madam Chair, Commissioners, good morning. Greg Chamoff, 12323 Southeast 25th Avenue, Milwaukee. President of the Milwaukee City Council, Mayor Ferguson, sends his regrets. He is attending to a family matter out of state. I'm not here today to tell you how to come up with the funds to keep your commitment. I would like, however, to share a few comments about why it's important to keep the commitment separate and apart from the advice that you've received from your council. The money matters to the quality of the line, not to the existence of the line. I understand that there are a number of county residents who don't want the line, but the line is coming. That was a decision made by Metro in 2008. Clackamas County's contribution keeps TriMet committed to making and able to make the line as good a neighbor as the line can be made to be. Without Clackamas County's funds, the line won't be as safe as the line could be, noise will be worse than it will otherwise be, and riders will end up parking their cars on the neighborhood streets instead of in a parking garage. Light rail has been a contentious issue in Milwaukee, as it has been for the county at large, but the consistent message that we in Milwaukee have received, even from the folks who don't want light rail, has been, don't let TriMet do it on the cheap. Please make sure that if it's coming, TriMet does it right. Please do it right. Please keep the funding commitment. Thank you.
Thank you. And then from there on, not having any other elected officials, I will call people two at a time. And the next two I have are Kim Parker and Peter Watts. And on deck after them will be Fred Nelligan and Rose Johnson.
Good morning. I'm Kim Parker. I am the Executive Director of the Workforce Investment Council today. I am here to speak with you in that capacity, and I'm here to talk about jobs. My address? Yes. My home address, 421 Southeast 9th Avenue, Canby, Oregon. As you know, the unemployment rate in our county continues to hover in the mid-8s. In June, it was 8.6%. Multnomah and Washington County, similar. So when we look at the full labor shed, we have an unemployment problem in our area. We, the organization, the Workforce Investment Council, works with job seekers every single day. These are people who are willing to go back to school, to get a credential, to get perhaps a GED, any sorts of occupational training so that they can get a job to take care of their families. These folks need jobs. Economic vitality is dependent upon people working, as we all know. So today I am here to advocate for jobs and for job creation. This project, as I understand it, is projected to create 14,000 direct and indirect jobs. This alone will spur economic development in our county, and I encourage your support.
Thank you.
Thank you. My name is Peter Watts, and my address is 13348 Fielding Road. I live in unincorporated Clackamas County. I'm here today as the president of the Clackamas County Business Alliance. I'm an attorney that practices law in Clackamas County, and I've been a resident of the county my entire life. And I'm not here so much to talk about this project as I'm here to talk about the importance of keeping a promise, the importance of honoring our contract, and the effect that not doing so will have in the future on our ability to contract in our region. And let me just say I have tremendous respect for Commissioner Savis's commitment to public comment, to his commitment to make sure that the conversation happens. But this conversation happened in 2010. There was an opportunity for citizens of the county to comment. They did so, and 3 out of the 4 of you voted in order to enter into this contract. If you were to renege on this contract, regardless of whether it's a good contract or not, you're going to compromise our ability to contract with Metro, to do business with the state of Oregon. This is about keeping a promise. This is about keeping your word. The legal implications aside, I feel very strongly that you have a moral and ethical responsibility to do what you said you were going to do. And that if you don't do so, then when you're sitting across the table from Tom Hughes, and he needs to know that if you broker a deal, you're going to honor your commitment, he needs to know that you're going to do that. And if you decide not to honor this commitment, he's not going to be able to trust your word. If you don't honor your written representations, then when the governor is trying to cite a company in Clackamas County and you make representations to their office about what you're willing to do, they're not going to be able to rely on those. I think that I think this is about the integrity of our county, and this is about doing the right thing. And it's about our ability to be able to do business in the future. And I'm very worried that if you take a step to revoke this contract, if you can find some legal way to revoke this contract, then the ripple effect will be profound, and it will be very bad for the county. And so I would ask that you keep your promise. I would ask that you honor the written representations that you have made to another in this intergovernmental agreement. And I would ask that you continue to do that in the future so that people can trust us and so that people can know when Clackamas County gives their commitment to something that they're going to follow through. Thank you very much.
Thank you. The next ones I have are Fred Nelligan and Rose Johnson.
Rose Johnson, Gladstone, Oregon. I just wanted to call your attention to a My Turn article in the July 23rd Oregonian in the Clackamas County Community section where the mayor of Damascus, Steve Spinnett, wrote about his support of referring matters like light rail and also the specific problems they're having in Damascus to the voters. So this is a new mayor who's only been on board since late 2010. And he is, as a public official, is in support of these matters being referred to the voters. And I just hope that you realize that this is going on right here in our county. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioners, for this opportunity. My name is Fred Nelligan. I live at 15110 Southeast Concord Court in Oak Grove. As you know, I'm here in support of Clackamas County, its citizens, its voters, its elected representatives, upholding a contractual agreement made on our behalf to fund light rail. You might not know this, however, that I am becoming one of the frustrated people. Why? Because of this forum today. How in the world can there be any question about honoring an interagency agreement? Sure, I hear the call for a vote. This is continually being voted on, though, meeting after meeting. Where have these people been? I am holding here a list of meetings held in the last year and a half on this project where anyone and anyone could attend and participate. 6 pages of meetings, over 200 in total, and over 40% of these have been focused on Clackamas County. And this doesn't even include all the local meetings people could attend. I ask again, where have people been? What I do know is that the majority of those who have attended are people looking to influence the process, not destroy it. They are building something and affecting change, not going backwards, not allowing decay and blight to further overcome our communities. If you were to add up all the people working on this project to make it fit and work and succeed, from professionals and citizens, there would be well over 1,000 dedicated individuals. I have a question for each of you. Which form is more important? The one where people contribute ideas to work to solve challenging, good and bad issues, or the one like we're having here today where people want to vent their frustration, their fear, and not work on building something for their futures? This all just seems so selfish. Lastly, I have to tell you how sad it is to hear people who have lived in Oak Grove for decades who still talk about how badly the community was disrespected and ignored by our county back in the 80s and 90s, and who are now focused on turning away this project and the economic revitalization it will bring to our communities and ultimately to our service districts. It makes no sense to me. There has been no benefit, zero economic value, actually I would say negative value, in this decades-old practice of isolation and disconnection from the rest of the county and the Portland metro area. My request to all is stop living back there, live up here. Let's all live in the present and build for the future, because all we have are the choices we make today, and the choices we make will be our future. So make the correct choice for the future of our community and our county. Thank you.
Thank you. The next two I have up are Steve Lawhead and Susan Hanson. And after that, we'll have Janet Schoenheit and Jim Gilbert.
Hi, I'm Susan Hanson, P.O. Box 50, Molalla, Oregon. Thank you for the opportunity to comment. I fully support light rail. I encourage you to keep your commitment, and I want to 100% endorse the speaker that just left and talked about the great citizen involvement opportunities you provide over and over again for every single person in the county if they take the time to come and participate from the start. I lived in the Hollywood District, Rose City Park area for 20 years before I moved to Clackamas County. During that time, when I was first there in the early 80s, the Hollywood District was extremely blighted, decayed, and losing its stores and its economy. Light rail then came to that neighborhood with 2 light rail stops within walking distance of my house. My neighbors and I all celebrated and enjoyed light rail from the start. Hollywood District today is a vitally restored place with Trader Joe's, condos, great stores. The local students in the area use light rail. Retired people use light rail. People who wouldn't take buses use light rail. I used it especially to avoid traffic problems. Every morning, a high official banker dressed in a suit and tie got up and walked to light rail so he didn't have to clog up the roads and pay for parking downtown. I think that the fears that are being portrayed about light rail are way over-exaggerated. In fact, light rail creates walkable communities, walkability scores, then add to your property values. I've been keeping track of the values in my old neighborhood. They have held up far better than neighborhoods that didn't have multimodal transit choices. So as gas prices rise, as the cost to maintain and build roads outreaches our ability to pay for them, and as air pollution is well-founded as a serious health problem going forward, I think light rail is an essential part of the multimodal package we need to move Clackamas County forward. We can't be isolationist. We have to accept that we have to move people back and forth through the whole metro, and we can't disallow people who can't afford cars and gas the ability to have fast, efficient, and clean ways to get where they need to go. Thank you.
Thank you.
My name is Steve Lawhead. I live at 19125 Southwest Longfellow Avenue. Commissioners, thank you for this opportunity to speak. I'm here today to ask you to support the citizens of Clackamas County by placing a measure on the ballot that will give the citizens of Clackamas County the right to vote on the construction and funding of the Clackamas County's portion of the Portland to Milwaukee light rail project to Park Avenue. Now, lawyers and city officials aside, the funding commitment depends upon the citizens of Clackamas County, the citizens, because we will force a vote just like we did on the bridge, and we're ready to do it. If you don't listen to us, we have a number of people that are going to go out there and get more petitions, get more signatures, and we're going to shut this down. As far as the contract is with Metro, we all know the contracts can be changed, redone, even tore up. And the reason that these things are happening is because of the economy. We just don't, we're broke. We do not have the money to do this. You're going to put us all in debt, then you're going to want to tax us some more. We know how this Selwood Bridge turned out. The citizens of Clackamas County voted 2-1 against it. To avoid the same embarrassment, I suggest that the council allow the citizens to vote up or down on this light rail. We can do this the easy way or the hard way. That's about all I have to say. I urge that you allow us to vote. Thank you.
Okay. The next two up are Janet Schoenheit and Jim Gilbert, and on deck after that are Joe Esmond and Bob Tackett.
I'm Janet Schoenheit, 13780 Southeast Fern Ridge Avenue, Milwaukee. Commissioners, I'm here to ask you to support the citizens of Clackamas County by placing a measure on the ballot to let the citizens vote on the construction and funding of light rail projects in our county. Citizens who have lived or still live near light rail know light rail blight. The loss of businesses, the snarled traffic, the enormous cost of construction and maintenance, the small percentage of the public who ride it, and the increased crime. As I have only 3 minutes, I will speak about the crime light rail brings. Rick Bella's recent Oregonian article stated that the number of crimes at the Clackamas Town Center and its light rail facilities in the last 6 months of 2009 was 503. Light rail opened there in October of 2009. In the first 6 months of 2010, crimes there had increased to 745. A 50% increase in crimes that starts at 8 and increases to 12 crimes would be small, but this is not. Commissioner Bernard, you made that 8 to 12 crimes argument on July 8th and said that a 50% increase was inconsequential. Make that same argument to the families of those who will be killed at light rail stations. Light rail brought this crime to the town center. TriMet says they'll add more police, but the county sheriff says he cannot provide enough police to abate the crime light rail will bring. Rail station crime figures do not include those crimes that occur outside of the rail station camera's view in the neighborhoods. Would you bring this to our county neighborhoods without our approval? Then whom are you working for as commissioners? For temporary jobs construction workers who would have to build light rail, or designs of social planners who think it's best for us? Are you for those special interests or for the interests of the people? Act as Clackamas County's commission to prevent light rail blight from occurring across our county. And second Commissioner Savis's motion of July 8th to put light rail to a vote of the people and show us that you do. And as to the IGA, I know for a fact that in the past with a CCSD Sewer District number 1, that the IGAs with all the cities of the county were negated, and it happens. Thank you.
Good morning, Commissioners. My name is Jim Gilbert. I live at 28696 South Kramer Road, Molalla. I'm a nursery owner and past president of the Molalla Community Planning Organization. And today I'm here to testify on behalf of the Molalla CPO. At our meeting on Tuesday night, we voted to support the light rail project, as previously agreed to by the Board of Commissioners. We encourage the BCC to fulfill its contractual obligations to this project for the following reasons. Our county has already committed funding to this, and it does seem somewhat unusual to be debating a project after this contract has already been made. However, it seems like that's what's happening. Obviously, if we fail to fulfill contracts, our future ability to work with other regional governments and could expose the county to legal claims and financial ability and hurt our ability to work with these governments in the future. Light rail has proven to reduce pollution and traffic congestion. Improving our transportation infrastructure is essential for our county's long-term prosperity. This light rail project will also help reduce our dependence upon fossil fuel and improve air quality in our region. Very importantly, this project will create needed jobs and stimulate our economy. Constructing this light rail extension will create up to 14,000 jobs, as I understand, and generate over $500 million in personal income in our region. Our contribution is a bargain. For a $1.4 billion project, we're contributing $25 million. And really, finally, I don't believe that an election is needed in this case. You've been elected to represent the citizens of Clackamas County, and this light rail project is the type of decision we expect you to make. Our county cannot be efficiently run by frequent, expensive referrals to the voters. Attached to the testimony that I gave you as a letter from one of our members, which we received an email, I'll briefly read it. Glad to hear the Molalla CPO is supporting this project, especially glad since my firm and even my survey group has had a lot of involvement in the TriMet Portland to Milwaukee light rail project. For surveying, we are the firm providing the mapping for approximately 7.5 mile line, and we are also providing portions of the right-of-way and property ownership resolution on the west side of the river. One of my surveyors also lives in Molalla too. So yes, it is already keeping Molalla area residents busy and employed, while in the future providing us with another commuting option. Having traveled extensively in Europe and Asia, I recognize that millions of people rely upon safe, reliable, and efficient mass transit. And I think once this project is completed, we'll be proud of it. Thank you.
Thank you. What did I say? Next up are Joe Esmond and Bob Tackett, and on deck are Warren Kitchen and Jim Sanders.
Ready? Good morning, Chair, and members of the Commission. Thank you for all your hard work. I'm sure.
Just give your name and address.
Excuse me, Joe Esmond. I am a business agent for the IBEW Local 48, which is the Electrical Workers Union. I'll be speaking for them, and I'm speaking on behalf of the Columbia Pacific Building Trades, representing 15,000 members in the metro area of skilled labor. We are coming out in 100% support of the light rail agreement. I'll speak briefly on the fact we probably have 2,000 members that live in this county, 2,000 members who do construction, who have a family, who have health insurance, and pay their taxes. So this is very important to us, and we urge you to do this. I will mention the Blue Heron Mill that was shut down recently. I'm sure it was a big hit to your tax base. But more importantly, it was a big hit to the people who worked there for many, many years. So maybe there's a possibility that some of those people who are skilled in certain trades would be able to go back to work and look their family in the eye and say, I'm not on the dole. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. My name is Bob Tackett. I work at 1125 Southeast Madison in Portland, Northwest Oregon Labor Council. We represent approximately 50,000 people that live and work, men and women that live and work in Multnomah, Washington, Columbia, and Clackamas counties. Like Joe, I'm here in support of this project. The gentleman ahead of us and Kim Parker have already spoken about the jobs, but most people in Oregon would agree 14,000 jobs is nothing to sneeze at. These are good paying jobs. They pay taxes. This money will be paid back. Plus, the gentleman here spoke about integrity and obligation of the contract. So again, speaking on behalf of the 50,000 people that I represent, we support this project. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. And then I have Warren Kitchen and Jim Sanders are up. next. And on deck, I have Annette Gariello and Susan Sean.
Should I just go?
You can just go, yeah.
Okay. Good morning, Jim Sanders, Milwaukee. I got to speak fast because I got a lot of stuff to cover because it seems like you only get to talk longer if you're for this boondoggle. A couple of weeks ago, Commissioner Savas made a motion to put funding of Milwaukee Light Rail on the ballot. Of course, there were no seconds, but interesting things were said. Besides Commissioner Leininger's out-of-context Edmund Burke quote, Commissioner Damon said a bizarre thing. She said she wasn't quite up to speed on Milwaukee Light Rail and couldn't comment. That's odd to me since she was on the project staff as a consultant for the Milwaukee Light Rail Project Citizens Advisory Committee. Her whole entire job was to go to the citizens and give all the information that she knew about Milwaukee Light Rail. She knows more about it than anybody up there probably. This is a blatant conflict of interest. I think she should recuse herself from any further dealings with Milwaukee Light Rail. Last week I sent an email to Commissioner Leininger's office asking for documentation for the 14,000 jobs that seems to be the big cry here. I figured someone had to list all the job categories, how many people for each category, and where the people were coming from since some of the companies are coming from out of town. The reply was, and I quote from a staffer, "We're looking into your question, Mr. Sanders, and we'll respond in a few days. Today is day 8. Here's one for you. Everybody knows the Big Dig in Boston, the largest construction project in the history of the United States. At the peak of construction, there were 5,000 workers involved with that project. I expect documentation on the 14,000 jobs soon. After all, I'm positive that it was based on fact and not just grabbed out of thin air." Commissioner Leininger also goes on and on about the contract with TriMet for $25 million. How could you possibly enter into a binding contract without the money in place? I'm sure there's probably some legal issues, but I know for a fact it is just not smart business. I know I wouldn't do it in my business. The only way to pay for it is to grab revenue streams that are already earmarked for other things. I can see the headlines now. TriMet sues Clackamas County Commissioners for breach of contract. Commissioner Bernard, you've got to stop using farmers market as a basis for your actions. You can't tell me that this is a true cross-section of Clackamas County. I'm thinking people didn't drive from Estacada, Molalla, Sandy, Damascus, Boring, or wherever to come down to your market, sit at your booth, and say, we really, really want this thing. And interestingly enough, it is possible that what if that, with the alignment was just 2 blocks further north in going into Milwaukee proper, I don't think we'd be sitting here today. A wise man once said, I'm not going to mention any names, but his initials are Paul Savas. We owe the people consistent and accurate information. These examples were never consistent and accurate, and we voted this thing down twice. What part of no don't you understand? Thank you. Have a great day.
The next two I have are Annette Gariello and, or however you correct me on that one, and Susan Sean. And I don't have Warren Kitchen, so. I called him.
Good morning. I'm Annette Guariello. My address is 3475 Southeast Birch in Milwaukee. And I would like to represent the hundreds of thousands of working class professionals who need and depend on the light rail system, as well as the senior citizens of the South Portland area who in the next 15 years will become highly dependent on a better mobile system. I worked 26 years in the Bonneville Power Administration. I commuted 20 of those years by car on McLaughlin Boulevard, bumper-to-bumper traffic. The last 6 years, I commuted on TriMet buses and took the MAX light rail over to Bonneville with 600 employees, none of whom were gang members, many of whom were high-level professionals. We often took the MAX to the airport to commute for business trips, and it was definitely the better choice. I believe there has been an intense passion bringing up the reality of crime increase and other potential blight within the areas. I can guarantee you that the Lloyd District improved 100-fold once the light rail arrived. And on that last note, I'd like to clarify, it is not mobility that brings crime into the areas. And if we look at the South Portland, Milwaukee, primarily Oak Grove, Gladstone areas, we can look at these pictures as an example of what's already here. When you have gun shops, apathy, neglect, greed, and social decay, you have the ingredients for gangs already firmly secure in this area. The mobility that brings people together to work, to improve job opportunities, that is not what brings gangs out to an area. It is isolation, it is blight. So please stick with your original beliefs that this is something needed. The federal government does not invest on a whim. They look for the needs. They look for the needs of areas where there will be future growth. They predict transportation in the same way they predict your electrical needs. And this is something that needs to be respected. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Susan Shawn. My address is 13939 Southeast Fair Oaks Way in Oak Grove. Appreciate all of your hard work. I'm here to speak to what I think is the underlying issue. There are a lot of issues on the table. There's light rail, there's ballot, no ballot, there's, it just goes on. But I think I'm actually, for the first time in my life, with the fellow from the Clackamas Business Alliance. I actually believe the issue on the table is the integrity of the county and whether or not we're going to be able to do business long term. I work very hard with the Watershed Council. There's a new Watershed Council, the North Clackamas Urban Watersheds Council. We have no operating money. We depend on grants and for funding. And so as a result, we actually depend on Metro, for example, to be able to restore the Kellogg, Mount Scott watershed and all the watersheds in the Oak Grove area. If we can't do business with them either, we're going to be in a bad spot. So I urge you to follow one of your mottos that actually used to give me fits, and that is promises made, promises kept. None of you were on the board when that was the motto of the county board, and that had to do with building the regional tournament baseball complex at North Clackamas Park. And whatever you have to say about the park or not the park, that's one of the reasons why that $4 million park was built. Promises made, promises kept. The whole idea was to keep the integrity of the county. And so I'm in this ironic situation now of saying, yes, I understand that, I get it, and I support it. So thank you.
Thank you. And the next two up are Catherine Blosser and Jim Myers. And I would remind people again to be respectful of all our speakers, no matter which side of the issue they're speaking on, and not be disruptive in any way.
Catherine Blosser, 14912 Southeast Fair Oaks Avenue in Oak Grove. The cost for operating and maintaining the infrastructure for personal motor vehicles will continue to increase to an unsustainable point. As one political commentator recently wrote, when public works investments are part of the metropolitan plans for smarter growth, they can ease congestion, reduce commuter times, and give our citizens back valuable minutes or hours they waste in traffic. If you want a pro-family policy, this is it. Such wise infrastructure investment clears the road for commerce and efficient development patterns that save time and money for businesses and citizens. Granted, our current economy doesn't make the $25 million investment easy to swallow. The selected funding option will require a close analysis of alternatives with respect to and within the context of all the other commitments the county has made. I expect you to do your homework and present your choice as our accountable representatives after educating and immersing yourselves in the process. Clackamas County is already committed to the shared regional value of bringing light rail to the county and can ill afford to have its veracity questioned. I think it's the right investment and will help set the stage for mobility and economic opportunities for decades. We all benefit by keeping a seat at the regional table by maintaining our sense of involvement in this important regional endeavor. Thanks.
Thank you.
Council members, my name is Jim Myers. My address is 40120 South Sawtell Road, Molalla. I'm here today to ask you to support the citizens of Clackamas County by placing a measure on the ballot that will allow the voters the right to vote on construction and funding on the Clackamas County portion of the Portland to Milwaukee light rail. The cost of this project is going to be $205 million per mile. The cost per mile numbers are staggering when compared with transit projects elsewhere. In 2002, Metro estimated that the same Milwaukee light rail project using the Hawthorne Bridge would cost only $72 million. The North Portland Max Line was built for $60 million a mile. Express bus service is especially attractive in comparison. The Eugene Bus Rapid Transit Line, known locally as the Emerald Express, cost $6 million a mile. The Los Angeles Rapid Bus System was implemented for a mere $335,000 a mile. Because the LA Rapid Bus System was so economical, it has been implemented on 369 miles of routes in less than a decade. The service utilizes existing arterials and provides faster travel times than light rail by limiting passenger stops to no more than one per mile. TriMet could have implemented a rapid bus option on McLaughlin Boulevard years ago if good service was actually a priority, but it appears it isn't. In fact, during the past 2 years, TriMet's bus service has been cut by 14%, light rail by 10%, and most recent new rail line, the Green Line to Clackamas Town Center, is operating 33% below Plan 4 levels. At certain times of the day, the service is now down to one train per hour on the Green Line. How many average taxpayers would vote to spend $1.5 billion on a slow train? Well, we already know the answer. In both 1996 and 98, the North-South Light Rail project was voted on the ballot, and it was voted down each time. But those results clearly don't matter to TriMet and possibly to Clackamas County commissioners. TriMet is taking a huge gamble with this project. The formal grant application for the $750 million in federal money has not even been submitted to the Federal Transit Agency, and the matching funds promised by Portland, Milwaukee, and Clackamas County are still under discussion. TriMet and Clackamas County could be building a rail line to nowhere. If it dies in mid-construction, it would be a fitting monument to the arrogance of our local government. Thank you.
The next people I have up are Lynn Fisher and Edmund Parzdala. Oh, okay. Well, you're up. And after that, I have on deck Sarah.
Ishikawa.
Yes, and Eleanor Hunter.
Lynn Fisher, 16133 Southeast River Road, Oak Grove. I'm reading a letter on behalf of Neil Hankerson, Executive Vice President, Dark Horse Comics in Milwaukee. Dear members of the board, I support the Portland-Milwaukee Light Rail project and urge you to do the same. Dark Horse employees will benefit from light rail in a variety of ways. Our employees are excited with the prospects of light rail coming to Milwaukee because many of them already use automobile alternatives. Many of our staff reside in Clackamas County, including Molalla, Oregon City, West Linn, Lake Oswego, as well as Portland and Vancouver. Over 1/3 of our employees take TriMet to work daily. Having the Milwaukee Light Rail Station located a few blocks from our offices will encourage an even higher percentage of mass transit usage. Dark Horse Comics has been located in downtown Milwaukee since 1989. We have witnessed the downtown Milwaukee and Oak Grove retail bases erode significantly over the years. To counteract this downward trend, the City of Milwaukee has developed a special plan for the south end of Main Street. This plan will establish a plaza surrounded by retail and residential buildings. Community events and the farmers market will be held in the plaza. The light rail station is a key piece for this plan to succeed. The ridership will stimulate pedestrian counts and retail activity. An easy-to-use transportation option, making the downtown more accessible, is very important for the feasibility of the plaza project and the overall financial health of the downtown Milwaukee business core. Also, Dark Horse and Portland State University have a special association. PSU and Clackamas Community College have expressed interest in establishing a comics-oriented satellite campus in Milwaukee. Direct light rail connectivity from PSU to Milwaukee should increase the likelihood of establishing this arts satellite. The campus would help the economic rehabilitation of Milwaukee and Oak Grove. Further, light rail will provide high school students additional educational opportunities with OMSI, PSU, PCC, and OHSU. Lastly, McLaughlin Boulevard is nearly at capacity. The stretch of Oak Grove to southeast Portland is becoming a rush hour nightmare, making the commute to and from Clackamas County very difficult. Extending light rail into southeast Portland, Milwaukee, and Clackamas County will make the regional MAX system accessible to more people. Park and ride lots will help get cars off McLaughlin and will create options for people who do not want to use a car. Please lend your support to this valuable project. Sincerely, Neil Hankerson, Executive Vice President, Dark Horse Comics.
Thank you.
Good morning, Commissioners. My name is Edmund Pieszchała. My address is 2515 Southeast Harrison Street in Milwaukee, Oregon. I'm here to ask you to support the citizens of Clackamas County by placing a measure on the ballot that will give a chance to the citizens to vote on the funding and the construction of the Milwaukee Light Rail, the Clackamas County portion. Clackamas County citizens have been voicing it loudly and clearly over many years that they do not want the Milwaukee Light Rail. The founders of our country made it clear that in matters not delegated to the federal government or to the state, the power belongs to the people. This is the 10th Amendment to the United States Constitution. Quote, "The powers not delegated to the United States by the Constitution, nor prohibited by it to the states, are reserved to the states respectively, or to the people." End quote. In a matter of local importance, like Milwaukee Light Rail, the power to decide should be delegated to the people. When I look at the process, how the commitments were made, how the legal obligations were explained, how the moral high stand has been brought into this discussion, I do not see any connection whatsoever to how our country was designed by our founders, how it was supposed to be run. What I see is a government, a local government, who does not listen to the citizens. That's very sad, but that's how I see it. Thank you.
The next ones I have up are Sarah. If you could please not applaud, because it holds up the time. And we're trying to move quickly. And I forgot to get the on decks on before, but Eleanor Hunter and Sarah Peshola. And up on deck after them are Mariana Moore and William Ware.
Good morning, Commissioners. My name is Sarah Peshola. I live at 2515 Southeast Harrison. If you're familiar with the map of Milwaukee, you'll realize that there's probably nobody involved with this issue who's going to be more impacted by this issue than myself and my family. We hear a lot of glowing stories of just how the light rail is going to change the community and bring in tons of money and jobs. I don't know if that's true or not. Some people say it's going to bring in a lot of crime. I don't know. I don't have a crystal ball. I do know that during the construction and the operation of the light rail. My house is 50 feet away from the rail and where it's going to cross at Harrison. And all of the trees will be cut down, and there'll be a big concrete retaining wall. It will basically be, for the rest of my life, and as long as my kids are growing up there, I have 5 little kids, a wasteland of concrete and overhead power lines, and the signal crossing every 15 minutes, and as this thing rattles by. That's going to be my quality of life, whether or not these jobs are temporary, whether or not everybody else will be coming in or say they're going to come in and use it. I don't know if they will or not, but I'm stuck there living with it 50 feet away for the rest of my life. So if there's some way, some loophole somewhere, ill-advised contracts can be gotten out of, and funding can dry up, and it would be really great if I had a voice. I have voted against it twice. I have gone to meetings, but I kind of gave up when it was obvious that nobody was paying any attention and they were just going to ram it through. So if I had a chance to vote yet again, I would vote it down. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Eleanor Hunter. I live at 15010 Southeast Laurie Avenue in Oak Grove. Hello, Board of County Commissioners. I believe that everyone in this room wants the same thing. We want a Clackamas County that is respected as a vibrant, healthy, resilient, innovative, and responsive regional partner. A Clackamas County that recognizes that success comes only through cooperation, that well-being comes only by balancing the needs of the environment, the economy, and the citizens, and that respect comes only by honoring the fear of the few while not allowing that fear to diminish the future of the collective. The health and well-being of Clackamas County is dependent on the health and well-being of the region. We're in this together. Isolation will only bring stagnation and decay to our local economy, to our neighborhoods, and to our options. Regional transportation is key to the economic health and vitality of the citizens of this entire county and key to achieving the sustainability goals adopted and promoted by the county. The Portland-Milwaukee Light Rail line is a needed catalyst to help shift Clackamas County towards a more sustainable future. I urge you all to keep the promises made by Clackamas County on the federal, state, and regional levels, but most importantly, to keep your promises to the citizens who rely on you to ensure their future and the future of their families. I urge your support of the Portland-Milwaukee Light Rail line. Thank you.
Thank you. Then I have up Mariana Moore and William Ware. And after that, on deck are Libby Wentz and Mac Woods.
Start? Yeah, I'm Mariana Nichols Moore. I grew up in Milwaukee. We came there in 1939 on Harrison Street. I went to all 3 of the schools that I feel are going to be impacted by this light rail. I loved the streetcar. We took it all the time. But this is a whole different thing. And moving it in next to the schools and into where every person leaving Milwaukee to go east is going to be impacted by this light rail coming every 15 minutes is ridiculous. I don't think they've made very good plans. They're starting the bridge now, and it isn't even high enough for the Portland Spirit and the stern wheeler to go under. I see all these things. It just keeps going and changing. And I went to some of the meetings. I don't know where the first one was at Milwaukee High School. But at that time, there was going to be 5 or 6 story parking structure at Park Avenue and a parking structure at Tacoma. And you've got no stops in there. There's no place for people to get on or off. And now, the last one, there's no parking structure at all at Tacoma, just a park and ride land parking lot. And the one at Park Avenue is getting smaller. I think that indicates that they're seeing they're not going to have these riders. And when I come from Gladstone, where I am now, I can come and catch at the park and ride and be downtown in 15 minutes. If I go and take the light rail from the town center, it takes 45 minutes. It stops nowhere where I'd want to get off. It's the same thing all over. And everybody, to get to this light rail, you have to have a car, or you're going to have to take buses and make transfers. It's totally inconvenient. and it's not going to help people that are anywhere off of the line. And they make the line to go from somewhere else to the destination of downtown. And things have changed. Downtown Portland's sort of static. And all the things are going on, all these other places. And you're not going to have transportation to go to them. You go from the town center to downtown, fine. You go from Hillsborough to downtown, fine. But if you have to go from Milwaukee to Hillsborough, or you have to go from Oregon City to Hillsborough, or any of these other places, you've got to take buses, or you've got to take a whole bunch of transfers, and it takes you twice as long. Let me see, what else did as I was looking at this, I just think it was mentioned to use the Hawthorne Bridge. I took my 3 little boys down to ride the streetcar when it closed the Hawthorne Bridge. And that would have been a very good option if they had to get something back in and take the old transit tracks. Well, now that's going to be a path for people to walk and take their bicycles. But this thing coming across will go in and disturb that path too. I ask you to reconsider this whole project.
Thank you. Okay.
Commissioners, my name is William Ware. I live at 14754 Southeast Y East, Damascus, Oregon. I'm here today to ask you to support the citizens of Clackamas County by placing a measure on the ballot that will give the citizens of Clackamas County the right to vote on the construction and funding of Clackamas County's portion of the Portland to Milwaukee light rail project to Park Avenue. This seems pretty straightforward to me. Local citizens exercising their right to vote on an issue that will impact them financially and sending a message to their elected officials of what they want or what they don't want. Right now, we want to be included in the process. Don't try to demean us by pulling some backroom maneuvers or give some sham layered excuse to prevent a measure from being brought to the voters. We demand to be trusted with our vote. Thank you.
Okay, the next 2 up are Libby Wentz and Mac Woods. And on deck are Yvonne Ware and Bonnie Marsh.
Go ahead.
Oh, you first.
Okay. Thank you, Madam Chair. My name is Libby Wentz, 545 Collins Crest, Gladstone. Light rail is a Multnomah pet agenda, and in my opinion, part of a greater agenda to groom us for a socialistic form of government, which dictates our transportation options, believes government can create real jobs, and ultimately strips us of the form of government on which America was founded. Watching how a person spends his or her own money is a very telling thing. How some commissioners have been funneling their monies makes me very distrustful of their intentions and their allegiances. Let light rail stop at Tacoma and save the ratepayers another $300 million. As far as council's opinion, and many people here, that we're obligated for the $25 million, I've made expensive mistakes. We all have. $25 million is a lot of money, but a bargain when compared to what we will escape. Thank you.
Clackamas County Commissioners, I'm Mac Woods, living in Canby at 11677 South Maxburg Road. We're all gathered here today for the same purpose concerning Clackamas County residents, property owners, and registered voters, and learning what we're going to do. I'm asking you to simply honor and respect the citizens of Clackamas County by placing a measure on the ballot that will give us the right to vote on the construction and the funding of Clackamas County's portion of the Portland to Milwaukee Light Rail project. I certainly understand what the word respect means after serving over 20 continuous years in the United States Navy. On that same thought, many, just as I, have served knowing the meaning of honor for our country, unselfishly, for the betterment of all and the freedom we still have
This includes Clackamas County. We also care about our Clackamas County police officers. We are honored to have top-notch police officers serving us, and we care about their safety, knowing they put their life on the line every day and every night for us. That includes you. We hear about all the growing crime on the light rail lines in Portland, and all the drug and gang members riding the buses and the rail doing their thing, and it's not healthy. You know that. Read the papers. I personally ask you to think about them, our very own Clackamas County police officers, and start supporting them just a little bit, not even close to what this light rail is going to cost, and give them support, your support, our support, in this down economy. You're not favoring our ones that serve us very well. You need to know that. I think every speaker here today would be in favor of supporting them with more officers and higher pay, and stop wasting your time pushing this runaway train bill that has not received approval, as I'm hearing, even though work is already in progress. So, commissioners, what is going on with this? What is it we don't understand that you're doing? For goodness sakes, please listen to us so we won't have to go through another drill as before on the vehicle registration fee bill that you passed. What a mess. And that cost the general public, when we had to deal with this, just gathering petitions. Didn't cost you anything, but it cost us a lot of time and effort. We want to know all of you better and want you to know us. Please honor our request. I'd like to say more.
Thank you. The next two I have are Yvonne Ware and Bonnie Marsh. And on deck are Carla and Bob Pletka. I think so.
Bonnie Marsh, 933 Northwest 3rd Avenue in Canby. Excuse me. So I'm still fairly a new resident to Clackamas County, and I'm trying to understand what's going on. It seems like there was a game change this morning when we heard council's report, which I'm hoping that we will investigate all avenues that are legally available to. I am against the light rail, the funding of it, what it's going to do to our economy. The jobs will, it sounds like from the union representatives that the people who are going to be working on these jobs may not be Clackamas County residents. I don't know that Clackamas County is going to really benefit from their income. It's good that they would have jobs. So I have a few rambling notes here. I changed my whole little speech here with our game change this morning. So I wanted to, I heard a little bit about the history that the gentleman over here mentioned this morning, and so to get me up to speed a little bit, I think it was mentioned that this has been under discussion for years and years, going back to the 90s, and that many times it was rejected. And I'm not sure, sometimes my mind wanders when I'm hearing things. Was it the many times that it was rejected, was it a vote by the people or was it a vote by commissioners? Can somebody answer me that?
Why don't you just go ahead and give your testimony?
Okay. Well, I want to know that, if I can have an answer to that. Okay. Because it seemed like when, it wasn't really specified in that, but it seemed as I was listening that the times that it was accepted or passed, that it was a vote by the commissioners, and not just Clackamas County, but Clark County, all over, it seems. Let's see, I don't want to ramble here too much, but that's an important item I wanted to say, is that we do want to have a voice in this. One of the gentlemen earlier said in his testimony that this has been under discussion in Clackamas County Commission meetings for years, and where were the people? Where was their voice? My response to that is we don't want meetings, we want to vote. Thank you very much.
My name is Yvonne Ware. I have lived at 14754 Southeast Y East in Damascus for more than 35 years. My take on what is happening today is the ability for citizens to be heard. That's not just us speaking, but you hearing what we're saying, particularly those of us who don't agree with this construction and funding of the Clackamas portion of the light rail. It's so important that issues to the citizens be understood and heard, our votes be counted and registered with you. Those of us who try to speak, I notice that more and more these hearings are getting smaller and smaller unless it's a big issue and has been advertised to the citizens, or they somehow hear it in their own neighborhoods and start getting upset. Then people get all worked up and they go to meetings and they spout off and they say what they feel, and then they move on to other issues, just like we do in our lives. But this is very important to us who live in Clackamas County. We'd like to be heard. Thank you for having this hearing today.
Okay. And then I have Carla and Bob Pletka. And after them on deck are Tom Fowler and Pat Russell.
My name is Carla Pletka, and I live at 13545 Southeast Beach Street in Milwaukee. And I'd like to thank you for your time. I guess right off the bat, I'd like to say that I'd like the opportunity to vote again on these issues about light rail and funding with Clackamas County. I brought the Oregonian. This was a couple weeks ago, I believe, and there's some questions in there. I just want to read a few parts of it. It says, after years of talking about Portland-Milwaukee light rail, voting on light rail, and voting down light rail, most Milwaukee residents have resigned themselves to the idea that it's coming whether they like it or not. You have great public apathy. It's why you're not getting people to meetings. And I mean, they're just like throwing up their hands. They're going, we already voted this down. Now Metro's coming in. We don't have to be hooked at the hip with Metro. We want to have our independence and our say. So, if Metro, they can, we'd like to have our own say on that, I guess. Then it talks about the ripple effect in downtown Milwaukee. It says the South Downtown Plan is a vision the city has for the south end of town to become a really pleasant place for people to be, whether those people are accessing the light rail or not. Then it says the plan was necessary for the city to imagine how the new light rail station would work. And the planning has been really useful for us. Then it goes on to say that in Milwaukee's June meeting focused mostly on 64 parking spaces being lost, just a small part of the losses in historic Milwaukee Lake Road and Island Station. City spokesperson Grady Wheeler said a lot of Milwaukee will be changed. Then it goes on to say the idea is to bring people into South Downtown mostly on foot or bike. But it starts out saying that light rail will modify only about 5% of the area in South Downtown, but the city plans to work expansively to make the area around the future station a hub for city life. However, there is no funding plan, and the city is not working on creating one. Well, I'd like to know how in the heck all this is going to come about. We're voting on this, hopefully, and then there's going to be all these plans to put everything in place. You have no idea. The city of Milwaukee has no idea how they're going to accomplish this and pay for it. When are we going to hear about that? And what does it cost? Even though they say plan, 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 they don't even know how they're going to pay for it. And I guess what I'd like to know is when our commissioners have businesses like Mr. Bernard, Commissioner Bernard,
I don't know. I feel like you should recuse yourself from voting on these issues, or at least make public how this affects your business, because you are going to be greatly affected. And I don't know. I hope you can be impartial. And I guess that's what I'd like to say.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good morning. Bob Pletka, same address, Milwaukee. There's been a lot of talk this morning from both sides about integrity. And I guess my question is, where was the integrity of the commission after light rail was voted down? Twice. Where was the integrity? I think it's unconscionable to make the decision that was made and then not put it to the vote of the people. The only moral thing to do, and I'll repeat that, the only moral thing to do is to put it back to the people for a vote. So far, I thank you, Mr. Savas, for being the moral voice so far, and I hope I hear more. I used to love to go to downtown Portland. Wonderful place. I avoid it at all costs now. I don't go there unless I'm drugged down there kicking and screaming. It's a horrible place. Same plans are now being made for downtown Milwaukee. I'm not with it. Let's see, talk about jobs. I'm not a great public speaker, you can probably tell. Jobs have been brought up. We don't want to subsidize and have government jobs. We want real jobs. Everybody here, I'm probably pretty sure, has checked out how much it costs us, the public, to subsidize every single ride on light rail. We're just paying for the creation of jobs out of our pocket. It's no good. I guess one more thing. I see this picture of a 30-foot tall something here that it kind of looks like, I don't know, maybe Bambi, but it has a full rack of horns on the top of it, and it has like a child's face on it. It's going to be 30 feet tall. Our living room's about 15 feet tall. I would guess this is maybe 16. This thing's enormous. It's huge. Is it going to come along with signs that say, entering the twilight zone from both sides? Are we going to get a say in anything about something like this? It's like a sci-fi movie. Thank you.
The next two I have up are Tom Fuller and Pat Russell. And on deck I have Cindy Miguel and Mark Gamba. Pat, I'll take those.
Should I get started while Pat is passing something out? Hello, Commissioners, or good afternoon now. First of all, I appreciate the work that you do and recognize the fact that public service and being on the hot seat is not easy, and it's usually a pretty thankless job. With that, again, I'm Tom Fuller, live at 2949 Southeast Walta Vista Court in Oak Grove, Oregon. I've been a resident of Milwaukee and Oak Grove for 40 years now. I'm an ex-business and property owner along McLaughlin in the Jennings Lodge area. And unfortunately, the area was not able to sustain my businesses during the last great recession 30 years ago. I've struggled with supporting light rail or not. I don't know if it's the best capital investment for North Clackamas County at the present time. It's very expensive, but overall now, I think it's a capital improvement program that we can't afford to pass up. I repeat, I don't think we can afford to pass this up. We desperately need the infrastructure jobs and the new development that it will create. We need to jumpstart the revitalization of North Clackamas County and mainly City of Milwaukee and Oak Grove. And I'm sure that the active community surrounding it will ensure that it's done right. We've had lots of public meetings, lots of comments. We've reviewed the art. We know a lot about this process, and there have been a lot of public involvement. I think that the BCC's past support of light rail and their $25 million commitment was appropriate and visionary. I think you're doing your job in our representative form of government, and I appreciate it. I think you need to leverage the federal funds and honor your legally binding $25 million support contract. Public vote now, I think, is too late. I believe the vote against the intergovernmental agreement and light rail would be a vote against jobs and economic development. And to me, this is the key argument for it. I urge folks to stop squabbling, make the best of this planned rail line in the Portland metro area. I think if Portland is America's most livable city, then I think North Clackamas County can become its most livable suburb. My wife wasn't able to be here today, but she wants to throw in her PS here. She says that she's looking forward and anxious to riding light rail to work every day.
Thank you.
Honorable Chair Lahan, esteemed commission members, my name is Pat Russell, and I reside at 15989 Southeast Bilquist Circle in Milwaukee in the Clackamas Westwood unincorporated urban area. You advocate and plan for full level of urban aspirations such as jobs, economic development, industrial diversification, attractive commercial destinations, sewer, water, surface water management, salmon recovery, police protection, health and social services, parks, tot lots and open spaces, trains, boatways, freeways, safe streets for cars, bikes, and pedestrians, libraries, mosquitoes, soil and water conservation, and 4-H, urban renewal in 3 areas, code enforcement, schools and higher education, fire protection, bus transit, and light rail, to name a few. Yes, the Max Green Line at Clackamas. Yet, on the other hand, you have continuously stated that the county should not be in the business of providing urban services, as that should be a city function. But the county is in the business, and yet to resolve the governance issues. Over the last 4 decades, with construction of Interstate 205, our county has continuously allowed urbanization with the same level of intensity as Washington County, thereby creating urban communities with urban demands. Yes, people and politicians shudder at the proposal of urban infill and the associated societal ills. You've just heard the extent of infrastructure and services necessary to support a modern urban society, yet both our nation and our communities are struggling to find the money to support these needs. Our citizens have acquiesced to certain revenue techniques to meet our needs, but are beginning to question some of them, including the tools of tax increment financing used in urban renewal project areas. We need to lay all our assorted needs on the table in the community conversation, prioritize them, and come to some sort of agreement of how to pay for them all. The recent introduction of a $25 million county promise to regional partners for light rail is no different. That promise was made without an apparent funding source acceptable to the community. This promise did not include community consideration of the likely urban infill form and subsequent service demands. The McLaughlin area plan is still a diamond in the rough. Even the mirage of significant federal New Starts funding is facing headwinds of Tea Party initiatives in Congress. It sounds like you have about a year to decide this issue. Let the community weigh in. Thank you.
Thank you. The next ones up are Cindy McWell and Mark Gamba. And on deck, I have Dale Seal and Brian Mosley.
Hi, thank you for hearing me today. I'm going to read this because I don't do this much and I'm a little nervous. In regard to light rail train, as of today, as far as I know, I and my neighbors, Cindy McGowl, 2611 Southeast Lark Street, Milwaukee. As I return, my neighbors and I on 27th at Lark Street are the only people in our community at this point who have already sustained one of the many impacts to come. TriMet has already purchased the home next door to me, belonging to my dearest neighbor of 18 years. Our children have grown up together and they are now gone, and their home is sitting vacant, awaiting demolition between winter and spring, I'm guessing. We knew this was coming and have been preparing for this since 2008. This plan for light rail train is firmly in place and no longer up for debate. In order to change anything, someone or some group would have to lose their integrity by defaulting on sealed contractual commitments, thereby adversely affecting the visions and plans of many active and vibrant community groups and individuals who have come together to say that we want and need a revitalized community. I will actually be losing many neighbors and trees and sustain considerable impacts as my home will be directly next to the trolley trail and the train. My first reaction was absolutely no, and yet, when I walked the existing trolley trail with a fellow grief-stricken neighbor, as we looked at the trees that we were losing, we saw the potential for the removal of so many invasive and toxic plant species that will now be replaced by natives and a bluff that is stable and no longer subject to erosion. I've decided that instead of operating in my emotions and fear, I am going to work together with many invested organizations. I've listed them here for you to read later, but I want to save time and not list them. I've decided to turn my grief and loss into position of action on behalf of my family and neighbors. Joined with others, my voice has already been heard, and I have realized results, which I've listed here for you to read later. I'm not in political office, and I have no real title. Despite the words of a young and zealous Oregonian reporter, I am not a guru of anything. I'm just a retired Oak Grove preschool teacher who has served hundreds of families. I'm a mother of 6 who wants an amazing community. And although I'm just a mom, I understand the strengths and gaps in our community. I've had 30 of my children in 7 North Clackamas schools. I did my student teaching in this district in special ed and know how money goes to schools. We need to build a revitalized, responsible, renewable community with a true family-friendly identity. This is a most worthy investment, one that has already been promised by the county's commitment to fund the light rail train. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Mark Gambo, 10414 Southeast 24th Avenue in Milwaukee. My house is a stone's throw from the light rail line, and I'm here to speak in favor of you keeping your commitment for the $25 million. Our forefathers put a lot of blood, sweat, and treasury into the infrastructure that we currently enjoy. The bridges, the highways, the public buildings. And I think they're all rolling in their graves due to the last election that was brought before the people as to whether or not to support infrastructure and the improvement of the maintaining the current infrastructure and moving forward with new infrastructure that our society will need. So I urge you not to bring it to a vote of the people, because the people, due to apathy and small-mindedness, are not capable of making those kind of decisions. Thank you.
The next two up are Dale Seal and Brian Mosley. Oh, and I would say on deck, John Charles and Steve Shop.
Sure.
Go ahead.
Hi, members of this commission. This is Dale Seal, 12691 Southeast 137th Happy Valley. And I'm here to start off by saying every morning our deputies in the sheriff's department get up, put on their badge, put their guns on, and decide, are they going to have to use that today? Are they going to have to face a life and death situation, including their families, having to live with that? And here we are debating whether we're going to let us vote on this supposedly contractual agreement with Metro about whether or not we are going to have this behemoth. Never mind, our federal government is broke, and as we speak, they're debating whether or not they have the ability to send out checks to their seniors in 2 or 3 days. And that's been a veiled threat by the Obama administration. If we don't raise the federal debt ceiling, which we can't repay anyway, $17 trillion or something like that. And here we're going to go and rely on the federal government to pay for this light rail, and then we're going to shake down our county at the expense potentially of our sheriff's department. So the irony that I want to discuss is we're going to make them go hand in hand to the citizens of Clackamas County to ask for a renewed levy. And but we're not going to let the voters of Clackamas vote on this Metro agreement. I mean, personally, I think we should ask for a divorce for Metro. Now is a good time. But here our sheriffs are going to be asked to renew the levy, and already there's been discussion on potentially raiding that levy to pay for children and domestic violence things. You're going to ask, it's an issue of trust, you're going to ask the taxpayers to vote for a renewed levy while it's already under the threat of having some of the money taken out of it? I don't think so. Our deputies deserve better than that. They face very serious situations. As you know, Commissioner Bernard, 2 weeks ago, you mentioned, you don't know what, but there's going to be a life and death situation. Why can't we back them up? Do we have no responsibility to them? County Council, you say we're obligated by contract. Aren't we obligated to our Sheriff's Department by if not contract, by ethics, by morality? I mean, a county commission, we should put them first, not this entity. And this issue of trust, I've got 59 seconds. The Selwood Bridge fee, we learned later in a blog by Sam Adams that they had planned on taking $20 million out of the Selwood Bridge to pay for light rail. And so as the Clackamas County residents realized this was a shell game where this money was, someone here referred to the issue of collectivism. And that's what we feel like we're being treated like. This big pot of money, urban renewal 25 here, never mind that's going to be more money away from our sheriff and essential service, including education and fire. And this pot of money that we're going to move 20 million here, 25 million here. And then we learn we have developers that are making donations to this PAC that we, the people who are all volunteers, we don't get money from any other outside groups. We come here. My wife had a medical appointment today that I had to cancel to come here. 10 seconds. So we are here to say we don't like shell games, and we don't like feeling like we're being manipulated by this tens of millions of dollars that's going to maybe be taken out of our Sheriff's Department to pay for these infrastructure.
Okay, go ahead, Brian Mosley.
My name is Brian Mosley. I live at 2490 Southeast Evergreen Street, the dead end. It's a new home. The last time I was at this facility was 2 years ago, right after I bought my house, to file for permits to fix it up and restore it to its kind of historical glory. I'm proud of my house. I call it Mosley Manor. I invite all of you actually to come visit it. It's at the dead end of Evergreen Street and see what I'm working on down there. I'm the new guy. I've only lived in Oregon for 4 years. I lived in Portland for the first 2. And I started attending meetings at the Philip Neri Parish put on by TriMet, and I learned about the light rail expansion. And I immediately started looking for a home along the light rail node. So, very complex issue. I am the new guy. I just want to kind of state that very clearly. But I'll tell you a little bit about my story. My house is only a block and a half from the station, and it's adjacent to the trolley trail, and those are actually 2 reasons why I chose to buy my house there. I commute about twice a month, lately much more frequently, all the way to Portland Airport, and it kind of sucks doing it by car and paying for the long-term parking, so I'm looking forward to being able to take the train all the way to the airport. I really love my neighbors there. I live next door to 2 World War II veterans. I myself am a Coast Guard veteran. Ralph taught me how to trap moles and gave me strawberry plants when I moved into the neighborhood. George whistles reveille in the morning and taps in the evening when he observes colors, so it's a very proud neighborhood. And Valerie and her family, her sons are arborists and carpenters, and they've been pitching in to help me work on my property, and they're all really happy to see the investment I'm making there. I've been having a lot of barbecues and get-togethers at my home, and a lot of people, I'm in my mid-40s, I'm kind of in the middle of my career, and a lot of people who are kind of in that same boat are discovering the convenience of Oak Grove and Milwaukee because they're coming to see my property, and they're really saying, man, this is a great neighborhood, and if I can get in out of Portland this easily. They're actually, I know of 4 couples, 3 that I know very well, who have actually 2 have offers on homes in Oak Grove, and 2 have moved to Milwaukee already. And a lot of it is because they want to be near that convenient light rail. One of them is, they're now housemates of mine. It's actually former owners of Naomi's Organic Farm Supply Shop. They had 11 employees, woman-owned business, and they've had to relocate, and they're very seriously looking at Oak Grove for relocation of their business. Again, 11 employees. And then just lastly, I used to live in Anchorage, Alaska when I was serving in the Coast Guard. And when I was there, I purchased 2 fourplexes, and it was an owner-occupier, sweat equity, tenant-landlord for 5 years in an area that I bought because an urban renewal project was underway. They did traffic calming, planted trees, and the neighborhood flourished, and I'm reinvesting those profits into Oak Grove. Thank you.
Thank you. John Charles and Steve Shop are up next, and on deck, Lynn Fox and Chris Janger. And I just want to clarify, I wasn't going to say anything till the end because, but it's been said numerous times now, this is not an agreement with Metro, it's with TriMet. Metro is the regional government, and TriMet is a transit agency, and they have nothing to do with each other. They're completely independent of each other. So just to be clear, so people aren't going away with the impression that we're making a deal with Metro, this is with TriMet. Yes.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. My name is John Charles, President of Cascade Policy Institute, a nonprofit policy research center. I'm a homeowner in Clackamas County, 58484 Sleepy Hollow Drive, Sandy. My testimony today is going to be maybe a little different than some of what you've heard. I have read the staff report, and I agree with the County Council that you have an IGA that is a legally enforceable contract. I've always felt that since I read it a year and a half ago. And it may be that the IGA is a stunningly bad deal for Clackamas County residents, and it may be the current TriMet commuters are going to be made significantly worse off by this $1.5 billion project, especially those who currently enjoy the 99 Express McLaughlin bus that will now no longer go to Portland. But you've made the agreement, so you have a $25 million problem on your hands. Having said that, there's nothing inherently contradictory with taking the view that you support the train or you are going to pay up on your deal, and also supporting or referring out a referendum to vote on urban renewal as the mechanism, because the staff report also clarifies your IGA is silent on how you're going to come up with the money. And when you first agreed to this a year and a half ago, I called your office and talked to an administrator asking, where's the $25 million coming from? And the answer essentially after a couple weeks of delay was, we don't really know, but we think urban renewal. Okay, well, if you refer out what the current initiative petition, which I have signed and which I've also given money to, is not an up or down vote on this measure, which some people think it is. It's simply to refer out whether voters would have a chance to speak, to vote on urban renewal as a finance mechanism. So you could save them some trouble and save the elections officials the trouble of having to validate signatures and all that. Simply refer it out, and then you could perform a great service by having an adult conversation with citizens about what is urban renewal, what is tax increment financing, and then if that's the route you choose to pay for this, what effect will that have on special districts like police, fire, and parks, because that is the problem with urban renewal. And I doubt if you left this building and found 100 people randomly on the street that you would find 1 out of 100 who could cogently explain urban renewal or TIF, because it's all inside baseball. Well, if you refer it out and put it on the ballot and say, well, we're thinking of urban renewal, what do you think of that? If the voters tell you no, or they want to vote on it, and subsequently they vote it down, then you can say, well, if you do that, the $25 million has to come from some other pot of money, and here's the trade-offs. The conversation about trade-offs could be useful. So I really encourage you to do it to help educate people about urban renewal as a finance mechanism. Thank you.
My name is Steve Shop. I'm from Tualatin. I hear the word obligation, and the county commissioners, at least 4 out of the 5, they feel they have an obligation to this contract with TriMet more than they do to the people of Clackamas County and the truth. And we've witnessed the departure from the truth and the citizen of the county over and over and over again, going back throughout the entire campaign for their vehicle registration fee. So what about enforcement? What's enforcement mean? The attorneys claim the agreement is enforceable. So you default on it. You save $25 million and the interest, which is really up to $45 million that you don't have. So what does TriMet do? There's only 4 parties to the agreement, 3 of which are Clackamas County. So does TriMet sue the county? That would be an exciting adventure, especially for people like me. TriMet suing Clackamas County. And at the end of that suit, what happens? There's going to be a termination fee. What is it, $100,000? TriMet General Manager Neil McFarland sat here in a work session and said, what would you do if Clackamas County didn't come up with their share? He said, we look at phased construction or find other money. You have no source of the money. And as we've discussed urban renewal here many times, the commissioners and they have staff working to deceive the public into believing urban renewal pays for itself. You have sought outside counsel. I don't know, you're looking at $600 an hour lawyers to look at our initiative petition, to review it and look for ways to topple it, disrupt it, and obstruct the voters? Is that honest? I don't think so. Urban renewal, in the way you have it laid out here, like always is completely dishonest. It's not development paying for development like Commissioner Bernard claimed a few meetings ago. It's borrowing the $25 million, giving it to TriMet, and then the real obligation is paying the bonds. That's where the real exercise in commitment is tested. Now, where is that money coming from? Does TriMet Light Rail Max Line to Milwaukee generate revenue? Well, of course not. All of that money, with the interest, will amount to over $40 million, will come from Deputy Poppins' payroll. He's sitting behind us in the back of the room. Currently, urban renewal takes the pay and benefits for 12 deputies out of the sheriff's budget. And with the addition of Milwaukee Light Rail and the bonded indebtedness and the payment of $45 million, education will suffer. The fire district will suffer. All of the money, all $45 million will come out of your general fund revenue stream from property taxes, and you know it. Now, there might be some pieces of development that will, in some kind of form, will promote some additional development money or tax money. But at the end of the day, that will not even come close to paying the debt.
Thank you. The next two I have up are Lynn Fox and Chips Janger, and on deck I have Mary Elway, or L perhaps, and Herb Chow.
Good morning. Thank you for the opportunity to testify today. My name is Lynn Fox. I can be reached at Post Office Box 236, Merrillhurst, Oregon, 97036 or 68. I own property and live in Clackamas County and have for over 20 years. And I want to begin by saying I agree with the attorney that we live in the here and now. And sometimes when we make mistakes in the past, we have to correct them in the here and now. And what I would encourage the council that you've employed to look into modifying the contract. People modify contracts and agreements all the time. I have neighbors who can no longer pay their home loans, and they've gone to their banks and they've renegotiated their contracts. People get divorced. They renegotiate their contracts. I'd like to address two comments that were made referring to the Lloyd Center and the Hollywood District, because I've had recent here and now experiences with those areas that were impacted profoundly by light rail and urban renewal in those areas. I was recently in a car accident, and I was going to see a new physician in the Hollywood District who we thought could help me. And after I drove from 11th Street to 44th Street, it took me over half an hour because I kept running into cul-de-sacs that used to be through streets that had been turned into cul-de-sacs to create bicycle boulevards. After I had battled my way through this for almost half an hour, I got to my doctor's office, my new doctor's office, and found that there was no place to park because the parking had been dedicated to a bicycle lane. So I turned around, drove home, canceled my contract, and never went to see that. Canceled my appointment and never went to see that doctor. I wonder how many people have had a similar experience. I have a friend, Tyler Stevens, who had a business in the Lloyd Center complex when they put in the light rail. One of his employees was raped. Several of his other employees were attacked in different incidents. He almost lost his business before he was able to finally buy his way out of his lease and move from that area because of the crime. Those are personal experiences that I have personal knowledge of that I'd like to convey to you that are different from what other people have discussed, which sort of seem to be pie in the sky, isn't this nice? Reality is, it's not nice. It's not livable. It's not convenient. I don't want it, and a lot of people don't who are living it right now. Apparently, this decision was made by a previous board. We all make mistakes. You have an opportunity to correct a previous mistake. It's my policy when someone's made a mistake to allow them an opportunity to do it. So we have an opportunity now to see if you will tell us whether or not you will put this on the ballot for us. Show us who you work for. Do you work for the people who elected you, or do you work for someone else? This is your opportunity to let us know. Thank you.
Thank you for this hearing, Commissioners. My name is Chips Janger. I live at 14068 Southeast Fair Oaks Avenue in Oak Grove. During the 1970s, I lived in Washington, D.C., and it was that time that light rail, in the form of the metro system that some of you may be familiar with, was being planned and then eventually built. During that period of time, for quite a bit of the time, I lived in Georgetown. The citizens of Georgetown, during that time, demanded that they be allowed to vote whether or not a light rail station would be allowed in Georgetown. And they were allowed to vote. They voted it down. Georgetown doesn't have a light rail station. Light rail actually passes right underneath it. It is, aside from the fact that it is now notoriously the most gridlocked area of, probably, they say, on the East Coast, there have been numerous articles stating that that was by far the worst vote ever taken. All the citizens there are not connected to the public transportation system. The reason that they voted it down, they used mostly security reasons. Security, they didn't want people from other neighborhoods coming into the Georgetown area. This has been probably, as I said, the greatest and most disappointed vote. There have been lots and lots of editorials about it and how much it would cost to redo it and could they do it, but they don't do it. They don't have it. This is what would happen. This is what we feel in Oak Grove would happen to us. We would not be connected to this transportation system which is going to connect this whole region. We need a public transportation system. We need to be connected to it. Some amazing things have happened during the past couple of years in Oak Grove. There's been a revitalization of spirit there, mostly built around the idea that we will have a light rail station, and that can begin to impact the redevelopment of McLaughlin Boulevard. Because if that doesn't take place, watch and see what would happen to that redevelopment. It will fail. It's really sad to even see that this is discussed for many of us who are really focused on public transportation and the need for it in our community. We hope you make the right decision, which is basically to continue with the obligation that the county has to complete this project. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Herb Chow and Mary Ellie.
My name is Mary Ellie. I live at 16106 Hunter Avenue in Oregon City. First of all, I would like to say we are not a democracy. We're a representative republic, and our representatives are elected to represent the people. But when the representatives are no longer responsive to the people, then the people must act. Basically, what I would like to say here is that this contract may be enforceable, but urban renewal doesn't seem like the best way to pay for this for all the aforementioned reasons. I would also like to add that there is no sunset clause to this thing, and so eventually it would just become a big slush fund for you all to do anything you want with. I would also like to point out that from this report from the Cascade Policy Institute that it's going to cost over $300,000 per rider for this thing. And that seems like an awful lot of money when buses, which are already in place, are faster and can get to different places. When you've got light rail, it's static. It can go from point A to point B. It cannot go to point C. And what if most of the people who want to ride it live at point C? They can't get there. So what happens? They put in this light rail, and the buses that are currently serving the people disappear. They're going to be gone. So it's going to be less efficient rather than more efficient. Thank you very much.
Thank you for the opportunity, Chair Charlotte Leanne and members of the County Commission. I wanted to address an issue up front about deception and how that creates so much problems. It is true that there at one point, Clackamas County Commission was controlled by 4 people who basically were Democrats who supported everything that Portland did. This is Clackamas County, though. We support something a little different. Everything you do when it comes to money is always the shell game. It's, for example, we're going to tell the people you're going to solicit support with the vehicle registration fee by telling them we're going to keep transportation dollars in Clackamas and in those local communities. First thing that happens, money's going to go to Portland. $20 million then is going to be diverted to the $1.5 billion light rail project. Metro then sets up a whole new taxing district to further tax Clackamas. Now that freezes growth when you have that kind of overregulation. There's a letter that was sent out by Mr. John Charles, and I wanted to read excerpts from it because I thought it was very applicable. Milwaukee to Portland corridor is already well served by TriMet. There are 9 buses stopping at Milwaukee Transit City, and 5 of them specifically travel on McLaughlin Boulevard to Portland City via Hawthorne Bridge, or the 3 local buses, 31, 32, and 33. One is an express bus, number 99, and one is a hybrid, number 30, originating in Estacada, continues to Portland for 6 runs, and in the morning peak, where it becomes known as that 31E and 31L. Both offer types of express services to Portland, from city to Portland. According to the published FEIS for the project, once light rail opens, all these buses will no longer be provided. Transit customers boarding the buses from South Point's forced to transfer to Milwaukee to a slow train with limited capacity. The degradation of service is the result. Assuming you're going to spend this $1.5 billion or part of it, contribute to it because you think it's going to improve things. So I want to bring that point. The ostensible goal of the project is to provide improved transit. Why are you planning to spend $1.5 billion and cut service? There's another point here. It says here the current scheduled time for the trip from Milwaukee to Portland State, downtown Portland State, number 99 Milwaukee Express, bus arrives in 17.5 minutes. An early morning run makes it in 12 minutes. The forecasted travel for light rail, which offers no express services, roughly 19 minutes. So we're increasing time. Average daily traffic on McLaughlin Boulevard is 46,000. In short, it's a myth to say that we're going to improve things with this here $1.5 billion light rail project, and that to create a shell game is wrong. I appreciate very much if you would put this to the voters and let us vote on it. Thank you.
The next cards I have up are, and we're kind of hurrying now because we have to take a break before 1. Eugene Schoenheit and Richard Langdon. Oh, you're going to pass. Okay. Then Les Poole.
Thank you for this opportunity to speak. Eugene Schoenheit, 13780 Southeast Fern Ridge in Milwaukee. I'm here to talk about the IGA and a couple points I've heard, and I've been waiting here so long, I almost forgot what legal counsel said. But what legal counsel was saying, this cannot be broken. And the way he said it, it's the same thing I heard 6 years ago back at Clearwater when we did the referendum against the Clearwater plan. It said, oh, it couldn't be broken. Well, we did the referendum. Clackamas County sued us for doing the referendum, and we went to court. We ended up with a settlement, and Clackamas County basically canceled 7 IGAs because of that deal. And I also in this IGA, I did read a section there that said a standard termination clause, and it's vague, but it is listed in the IGA. Currently, I'd like to say light rail's in its final design mode. We are basically supposed to be paying for this, and that's what the IGA says. But I don't see it in the budget. I don't see Clackamas County paying. What's going on here, and where's the projected cost schedule that should be listed with this IGA? All important points, that are actually missing. But the point is that we are supposed to be paying for this IGA right now. We're not even budgeting for it. I brought the board order that approved the IGA from February 4th. The board order basically does not match what the IGA says. And to make a good example here, it talks about $850 million from federal funding. Well, I later learned that TriMet basically knew before that date that they weren't getting the 50%, yet they still put out that they were getting 60%. That was incorrect. Also on the sheet, I noticed that Mount Loma County didn't pay anything. But the real clincher here is on the sheet, on this IGA agreement, it says Clackamas County, $25 million, expected. So there's a lot of legal problems here. Thank you.
Les Poole, I gave my address earlier. I heard a gentleman speak that mentioned about all the meetings and the involvement over the past year and a half. I'm here to tell you this has been going on 17 years. In 2003, there was an LPA selected, and here we are today discussing the parking problem and where the negatives will end up. And anyone that wants to do a little history to look back in 2005 and 2006 and 2007, they'll find out what this process was about. Folks have spoken about how great it'll be for downtown Milwaukee, and I'm not here to argue or oppose that. What I'm questioning is what is the county getting? What is the region getting? Not Portland getting a new bridge or Milwaukee getting a nice downtown so the owner of Dark Horse Comics can make money. I'm not against any of that. But you've heard me before say that the design, the tail end of this horse, we've got a beautiful horse in Portland, and by the time it gets down to Oak Grove, what end of the horse do we get? We've got a promise that we're going to have 600 or 1,000 or 300 cars at Park Street. We don't even really have any inkling of where this is going because the money isn't there. I was here about 3 months ago, and I mentioned this is going to happen, and here we all are. And I'm not disappointed in that because now it's come to the surface, and everyone that thought I didn't know what I was talking about now thinks I'm some kind of a great predictor like Nostradamus. You don't have to be a brain surgeon to see where things are going when commitments are made and the money isn't there. In 2008, the line was approved in a land use final order by Metro. Metro has lots to do with TriMet. They're the controlling authority. Metro is the source of the funding, and Metro approved 2 different terminuses for this line, knowing where the economy was and knowing that probably we were going to have issues. Since 2005, I believe, we've seen the debt load in the county go up by, I can't even tell you, 180 million, something like that. So the county can't borrow to finance their part of it from from what I understand. So urban renewal seems to be the only choice. And light rail and urban renewal are certainly two different issues. I want to show you 270 signatures that were collected at the Milwaukee Days supporting the right to vote. That festival was 8 hours long, 270. I need say no more. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. And with that, I don't have any more cards, and since we need to have a break, this would seem like an appropriate time to take one. I mean, we have to give the cable crew a break is the issue here.
We have to change.
So we will be back in 5 minutes, 10 minutes? What do they need? 5 minutes. 5 minutes for cable requirements.
Cable reset.
Cable reset. Well, I presume. We're about to reconvene, so take your seats or take the conversation out in the hall. Obviously, they listened to me. You're going to reconvene, so you'll need to take your seats or take the conversation out in the hall. The TV is about to come on again. I guess it is. First off, that was a lot of testimony to get through, and I think we got through it very efficiently, and I want to thank everybody. I know most people have left, but I want to express our appreciation for how politely people testified and responded to the testimony, because we had a lot of varying viewpoints, and people were respectful, and I really appreciate that. Next up, we have Gary Schmidt from Public and Government Affairs, who is going to summarize, let us know who left testimony or sent testimony ahead, and do a brief summary of the positions of the testimony that we've received in written form that were not able to testify today.
All right, Commissioners, this letter is from Robert and Virginia Clearwater of West Lynn, who write, support the citizens of Clackamas County by placing a measure on the ballot that will give the citizens of Clackamas County the right to vote on the construction and funding of Clackamas County's portion of the Portland to Milwaukee Light Rail project to Park Avenue. We are entitled to the freedom of choice, and that is done by voting. Stephen Garner of West Lynn writes, please pass a resolution today that puts the county's expenditures, whether our direct money or our indirect state and or federal funds, for the Portland to Milwaukee Light Rail to a vote of the county residents. Brendan McVicker of West Lynn writes, support the citizens of Clackamas County by placing a measure on the ballot that will give the citizens of Clackamas County the right to vote on the construction and funding of Clackamas County's portion of the Portland to Milwaukee Light Rail project to Park Avenue. Terry Dolan of Oak Grove writes, I am a retired TriMet operations employee. I also took the first trains down Washington Street to the Hillsborough Civic Center and years later on Interstate Avenue, and found the same welcome from citizens who would have ready access to the new transportation system. I always heard the critical voices from a few in other areas of the region who thought the new line would not serve them personally. People within cities are always on the move for work and commerce and social activity. Every urban area that continues to function has high-capacity, fixed guideway systems, of which light rail is one, and the appropriate system to do the heavy lifting for a metropolitan area of this size and density. I'm in support of the many who know that private investment follows public commitment. I support the Portland to Milwaukee Light Rail project. State Representative Carolyn Tomei writes, support both the Milwaukee Light Rail project for your efforts regarding urban renewal. It is important that some extra tools are developed to keep our cities vital. Milwaukee Light Rail and urban renewal development funding can provide Clackamas County with the additional tools our communities need to modernize facilities and remain viable locations for business. David Aschenbrenner of Milwaukee writes, I'm an avid supporter of light rail and someone who has worked to see this project come to the Clackamas County for over 11 years. I ask that you continue to support the project. We need to move forward on making Clackamas County more and better than it is now. We should honor our past, but strive to make the future better for all. Julie Nelligan, who does not give her city, I am a proponent of the next light rail project. Clackamas County has made a commitment to that project and should honor that commitment. Not honoring the commitment would further damage the county's reputation and result in litigation. Ron Hiesel from Milwaukee writes, please put light rail up for a vote. I am very opposed to bringing light rail here, mainly because the consistent crime increases everywhere they have added light rail. Jim and Kathy, no last name and no city, write, we want to vote on Milwaukee light rail funding in Clackamas County. Claire Fuchs from Milwaukee writes, I would like to show my support for the Orange Line. I would hate to see a delay because of it having to go to a vote. Nathan and Candace Burton, whose home is located 500 feet north of the Park Avenue station and 80 feet west of the light rail line, right? Our house and neighborhood is that it will be directly impacted by light rail construction. We are not excited about any of this. On the other hand, change for the better often comes with difficult choices and painful consequences. Access to great public transit is essential to building a more sustainable future. The Park Avenue and Oak Grove area of McLaughlin can and should be much better than it is. We have had a pretty good overall experience with representatives of the county and TriMet and have found the process to be open and transparent as we would hope to expect. That said, we definitely would like to have more direct commitments from the county to help deal with the noise impacts and loss of trees in our neighborhood. We welcome light rail and welcome the chance to make our voices heard regarding what this future will be. And those are the letters that were received.
Thank you very much. With that, we have finished the public input on this matter for discussion, and I will ask if there's what the commission would like to do.
Well, Madam Chair, for the purpose of discussion, and I can assure you that my vote would be no, but for the purpose of discussion, I move that we put on the ballot the funding that has been committed for voter approval.
I'll second that.
It's been moved by Commissioner Bernard and seconded by Commissioner Savas that we put a measure on the ballot regarding the $25 million commitment for Milwaukee Light Rail, Portland Milwaukee Light Rail, at least for the purposes of discussion. To the motion.
First, I would like to hear from our esteemed legal staff about some of the ramifications should the voters have this opportunity, and should the voters say no on the commitment by the county commission and past commissions to support light rail and its funding.
Chair Lehan, Commissioner Bernard, in terms of the ramifications for the vote, let me start backwards perhaps and work forwards. And by that I mean, if you were to refer this to a vote, and if the vote was to go against funding our commitment under the agreement, it is my best professional opinion that we would end up exactly where we are today. By that, I mean we have an IGA before us. If we had a vote not to fund the IGA, that vote would be purely advisory. It would not have the force of an initiative. It would not have the force of a referendum. It would not dictate to you where you would have to make the choice. And so it's my professional opinion that if we were to have the vote under the method, Commissioner Bernard, that you outlined, and if the vote were to be against funding it, we would end up back here again with a vote of the board. And then on top of that, Commissioner, we would have the implication of being called to task on our contract. It is a contract. It's the same as if we had formed a partnership in private enterprise, the same as if we had elected to become a business. It is more than a handshake. It is a binding agreement. Again, the fairest analogy is a partnership. We would be called to task, and we could very well end up in court. If we were to end up in court, the analogy was drawn back to the Clearwater experience, and the Clearwater experience resolved with a settlement that was something that could occur in a dramatically different fashion were it to occur in this context. And so I've talked too long, perhaps, without directly focusing on, Commissioner Bernard, what concerns you've got, but as I see it, we could end up in a very complicated situation with no more guidelines than we have today if we go out to a vote.
And in a follow-up, what if the vote was yes? What position would we be in?
No stronger.
Questions of staff, perhaps?
Well, okay, for
Oh,
questions of
or-
staff.
Or it doesn't matter, or discussion. either
Thank
one.
you. It's unfortunate that we've really got a number of really issues that we've talked about today, but as far as what's on the agenda, we really have one issue, and that's the contract. But I would like later perhaps an opportunity to speak to the other issues, including the motion. But I have an opportunity to ask staff. When I spoke earlier about 1.1, 1.3, I have my wrong copy of my notes on it. Could council specifically look at 1.6, project scope? A very short paragraph. I believe it's one sentence, one
I'm
long
looking at
sentence. And it reads, the project scope is shown in Exhibit E to this agreement. TriMet may amend the project scope from time to time to reflect additional engineering and design, revised estimates of funding availability, and/or additional requirements or guidance of the FTA. Well, there is another sentence. TriMet shall promptly provide to the county a revised Exhibit E to this agreement whenever the project scope is amended. As I read that, it tells me that in and of itself, they can indeed amend the agreement, and it doesn't show a role. And our first speaker, the only elected official that showed up today, Councilor Chamoff, made it explicitly clear that, should this project occur, that we do it right, we do it complete, and I think I've heard others say that today. I know that as far as my role in this topic of the agenda, the agreement, is I feel my duty to everyone is fulfillment and what we're to get for our $25 million. I am very concerned that needs to be either rewritten or explained in such a way that I have confidence going to our voters for $25 million, not including the bonding costs, which, in these economic times and so forth, I'm obviously concerned. We have federal funding challenges, but that's not what we're talking about today. But, I'm looking at the responsibility of $25 million with debt service. It's going to be millions more that we are on the hook, but yet the project could be rolled back. And I'm afraid, as one of our other latter speakers, is that we might get the short end of the stick on this, and that's what I'm concerned at. Clackamas County, we're here. It's my job. It's my duty. What does that mean? I know what it means to me. I know what it means to others. What does it mean to you?
Oh, okay. Commissioner Savas, I believe I can help you with that. Please, Chair Leanne, members of the board, I'm looking at page 9, specifically at section 3.2.1.1. And there I believe we have the crux of the concern that you have to take so much to heart. And at 3.2.1.1, it lays out very clearly that the project finance plan assumes a 60% New Start share. It goes on to identify in the next sentence, a New Start share approved by the FTA may be lower than this assumption. If that happens, the parties, that's Clackamas County and TriMet, agree to exercise good faith to adjust the project scope and/or project finance plan to account for any New Start share required or approved by FTA that is lower than the baseline assumption. And so if you think you're getting a good deal with TriMet, yes, we can proceed as things change. If you think you've got a bad deal with TriMet, you have myself and the entirety of your staff out to get our full measure for our $25 million.
Thank you for having said all that. And I appreciate, your comments. And a lot of the comments here really talked about the integrity of the county and the integrity of anyone making a deal. And I'm of the belief that, a deal's a deal, a handshake's a handshake, no matter how you do it. And I think that there is a lot of credibility for anyone who backs up on a deal. I've been in business for years. I've signed contracts, most of them good. Sometimes they went sideways. Sometimes I was on the losing end. Very painful. Quite painful sometimes to know that maybe a deal or an agreement went sideways, but that I had an obligation, I had a duty, and I had my integrity and my obligation. I think my moral character said I was obligated to this. So realizing this is an agreement and it's binding, and that's council's opinion, I would ask my fellow commissioners to draw some attention to 1.6. Not that I'm not suggesting that we cancel the agreement, because even if this agreement's canceled, there's still an agreement. I mean, there's really still an agreement that we honor our commitment. So it's not about evading the commitment, because I still believe there is a commitment there. However, it's really about doing my due diligence on behalf of my constituents that the agreement somehow or new language is drafted that secures that commitment. Because the only thing that's secure in here is our $25 million, to me, in that our responsibility to fulfill that, but yet that 1.6 reads as it does, and that concerns me. And well, obviously, we don't have 60% funding as well, as you pointed out.
Commissioner Savas, I'd just like to assure you that I have sat on that committee, as did Chair Peterson at the time, for many years, actually going detail to detail on every single project, every single aspect that it was in Milwaukee or in Oak Grove, as well as numerous CAC, Citizen Advisory Committees, that have gone through this and discussed whether the park and ride would be so many spaces or so many spaces, whether should the opportunity for some additional funding come along, that parking structure would be constructed in a way that you could add more parking. So all those things have gone on, have been discussed and evaluated. And I always said, as mayor of Milwaukee, and I continue to tell them today, that Milwaukee and Clackamas County have committed to a certain level of this project, and it falls below that level. Isn't the quality that we've expected and contracted with, we won't be satisfied that the contract has been followed. I believe, and I think you'll find the Citizen Advisory Committee will also, and a number of those wrote letters in, will concur that at present that is indeed happening and the contract is being fulfilled.
Commissioner Leininger.
Thank you to our legal counsel, Mr. Sedaris, for noting that within this agreement there are provisions to make sure that Clackamas County gets what Clackamas County needs in order for this project to be the kind of project that our residents support and desire. And together with Commissioner Savas and I believe the rest of the board, I plan to advocate fiercely to make sure that we get the kind of project in our county that we're paying for and that will be a great addition to our community. So I am happy that those provisions are in place. And I also want to note that I think a lot of our residents talked about a principle that is important, that you have noted is important to you too, and that is a deal is a deal. And if you care about being a good partner to business, and if you care about jobs, you need to provide the kind of certainty that businesses and contractual partners need, and you need to follow through on your written agreements. I absolutely plan to have us do that. I think this is a good project. It's not just a legally binding agreement. It's a good project. It's going to get cars off the road. It's going to get some very good public transportation into a part of our county that is going to thrive as a result of it, in contribution with other great steps that the community is taking and that I look forward to supporting. It's going to create construction jobs, and it's also going to support businesses that want to have permanent jobs there that currently exist and are looking to grow, or that may look to come to our community, as the gentleman who had lived in Anchorage, Alaska referred to, the people and the businesses that are going to want to come to our community because we have a robust, good public transportation system. So it's going to strengthen our economic vitality, get cars off the road, fulfill a binding agreement that we have, and I very much support going through with the commitment into which we've entered to provide $25 million to support this project.
Do I have something I want to say? I do, but is there more discussion here? And then I will.
Well, I guess I'm
discuss it also.
going to go ahead now that I've really addressed and staff, legal counsel, and got that one question answered. Again, I think the issue before us today, and really the motion on the floor, is to put this to a vote. So we're swaying from that. I think maybe for the best thing for me to do is look back at my notes and make the comments I want to make. I don't think this is a perfect project. Nor do I think that everything about the project is flawed. This is really one of those issues where I wish that county-wide, and I advocated for this in the interim when I felt that the public involvement piece was inconsistent with the history of this county. And I say that because when I got involved back in 1997, 98, I was asked to join a citizen committee, and I was getting involved in budget committees and so forth, and it was the McLaughlin Corridor 99 study. And then I was asked to get on the the alternative transportation study, which was an alternative to the vote down of Milwaukee Light Rail. What was the alternative transportation mode? So I sat on that committee. Then I sat on another committee, which was the South Corridor Alternatives Committee. And so I've served on those different committees with county involvement, with Metro involvement, with TriMet involvement, and there was a pattern of involvement through there, which I took part of. However, the year or two of study when Milwaukee Light Rail was back on the table and it was being studied, it was just that. It was Portland-Milwaukee Light Rail. And that time up to July of 2008, I recognized that Milwaukee had a great public involvement project, but a new alternative came on the table. And that alternative was to take an extension from Milwaukee into Oak Grove. And that's where I felt that, well, we ought to have some involvement in that. We ought to have a say. And so I went to Metro, and I went to TriMet, and they all referred me back to the county. Said, you need to go to the county and talk to the county. If you want more public involvement, we're not going to put out mailings. We're not going to go out and advertise that. That's the role of the county. Milwaukee's doing that, and I think that they did. They had a great model of public involvement. So I went to the county, and I talked to the chair, and I had 3 talks with the chair, and each time the chair really declined, saying there was either no money or wasn't necessary or whatever. But the answer basically was, we're not going to do it. And so in 2008, it was approved, and I came here and I testified in 2008 because more than anything, I spoke exactly to the lack of public involvement. I sat here on July 24th and expressed my frustration that for the years of my public involvement, that lapse of 2 years of public involvement outside of Milwaukee, in greater Clackamas County and Oak Grove, just simply lacked. And I was really disappointed. However, it was approved, and here we are today. And we're not really revisiting the decision. This decision was made, unfortunately, back then. Times have changed. The economy has worsened. We're in a bad way. I'm very excited that we've had a lot of public involvement. Sometimes when things are contentious and people aren't happy, it's not the kind of public involvement you always want. But nonetheless, it's public involvement. So I am encouraged by everyone who came out today. I know many have left. They take their time out of their day or their job or whatever to come down here and listen to us. Millions of citizens in this country are very concerned about our economy. They're looking closely at government. They rightfully expect us to be prudent with their taxpayer dollars. They are concerned about debt. Our debt is at a record high nationally and even here at the county. There's a legitimate expectation that we be fiscally responsible, especially in tough times, and conservative with those limited and scarce dollars. When we, the BCC, began the discussion on urban renewal a few weeks ago, the buzz really began. The advocates and the critics of urban renewal, public involvement, Milwaukee Light Rail suggested putting measures of the vote of the people. Our country and our state provide mechanisms that are designed to be the means of exercising the will and the voice of the people, whereby the intended checks and balances play out. Aside from the mechanisms, like the right to petition, the referendum process, and the right to vote in elections, we have a duty as elected officials to fulfill our fiduciary responsibility. That includes, in my opinion, a responsibility to evaluate, to analyze, to engage the community and the stakeholders. And as an elected official, I believe also I have a responsibility to be objective and to make a decision in a rational way. In short, weigh the pros and cons. Most importantly, I have to determine what I believe is in the best interest of the greater constituency. I have found over the years and as an elected official that my demonstrating my objectivity openly and candidly on the tough issues, it educates those listening and contributes to a dialogue that the public expects of their elected officials, that being genuine open government, transparent, considerate, and deliberative. What I experienced in the last 7 months is somewhat troublesome. Those that disagree are sometimes criticized or they're marginalized. It's unfortunate, but most of all, it's kind of polarizing. It's either right or it's wrong. And this is one of those decisions where it's really in the middle. And depending on who you are and what part of the topic or what part of the issue, it might be a little more clear. I respect those that disagree, but I'm also eager to hear the viewpoints and their reasonings for those who do disagree with me. When we face complex issues, inevitably misunderstanding of information and or misinformation occurs, and it further complicates matters. It is our role here at Clackamas County to provide accurate, adequate, unbiased, and timely information. And Goal 1 of the 19 state planning goals requires genuine public involvement. The success of projects in this county or in government in general in this state really depends on that, because we have situations where the public will rebel, and we jeopardize that if we don't have good public involvement. I think we're here today really as an example of maybe that 2-year void where we really lapsed in public involvement. The awkward situation I'm in here today is that there's been a lack of objectivity. We have not adequately demonstrated our objectivity, and there's a pattern of advocating and defending our positions. So, at times I'm inclined to take the opposite position only just to echo or hear or resonate, let people know that we heard them, that you were heard, you were not ignored. I hope the outcome will demonstrate our willingness to deliberate the merits and the shortcomings of the issues before us today. I expect that there is not a 100% right or wrong decision, and that there are pros and cons. I hope that we can respect one another regardless of what we collectively decide. I also hope those in the audience can also respect those differing positions. With that, and knowing that the agreement and knowing that a vote is not going to negate or disrupt this contract or the obligation, I still think that maybe from an advisory standpoint, the value in it would be to really gauge how good a job we're doing in the county. If it was an advisory vote, it would tell us, some of us, maybe what we want to hear, what we don't, but I think it's really valuable to know. How good a job are we doing? And I think it's our job, really, as elected officials, to keep our ear to the ground, try and figure out what people are wanting, and do the public involvement where it's needed. So realizing that when you water this down, that's really all it would be, is an advisory vote, I would still suggest we move forward with that.
Okay. Well, I will weigh in on this as well, and kind of give my thoughts from some of the things that I have been hearing today. And I think, as everyone has said, my big concern with this is our commitment and keeping our commitment, that we have made a deal, and the ability for us to do business or with other agencies would be impacted in ways that we can't even imagine from this perspective. We do contracts. You see the contracts we approve. We approve numerous contracts on a weekly basis. And our partners, whether they are business or nonprofit or other agencies, do have to be able to count on us on those contracts. It's true you can just tear up a contract, but it's kind of like tearing up your mortgage. There are consequences that are not good, and even aside from the ethical consideration. So I think there's no question up here about that issue, from what I'm hearing, that we are committed to the deal because we have so much at stake in terms of our reliability. But I also do believe that this is a good project, and while I was not involved in the years and really decades of decision-making for this project, I know that many elected officials over a long time were. And I do believe that it is part of what will help bring Clackamas County forward as a partner in the region. And we heard a number of people say that we couldn't isolate ourselves. We're already kind of isolated in Clackamas County in many ways. And right now, after the West Line opened to Wilsonville, we're the major area that's not well served by light rail or fixed transit. And I hate to see us be left behind. But beyond that, I wear this jobs pin lots of places, lots of days, wherever I go. I'm wearing these jobs pins, and I take these jobs pins seriously. And it is not a matter of supporting or advocating for more government jobs. These are jobs in the private sector. That's why you heard from the trade unions here and other workers, from electrical workers to whatever, the number of unions that were here. This is not $25 million, it's $1.4 billion. That is a construction project that over time that flows to the private sector. Doesn't come to government jobs, it comes to private contractors, and it ends with the project. And that's a significant difference from my thinking for how you spend money in tight times, is that government money needs to make every effort to have those dollars, especially for what is most appropriate for us to spend money on, which is public infrastructure. That those are the appropriate things, because it moves money to the private sector at a time when they are really struggling. And it ends as soon as the project ends. So it's entirely different than hiring more government workers. And it's because it supports jobs. And it's true, as someone also mentioned, that we can't guarantee those jobs will all be in Clackamas County. We certainly can't. But we know from the demographics that many of them will be Clackamas County jobs because we are a serious supplier of skilled labor throughout the whole Portland metro region. And part of supplying or part of doing contracts, of letting contracts, is being competitive with them. So we can't say that the jobs will all have to go to people in Clackamas County because a company from Washington County might come in with a better bid. And I don't know where their employees live anyway. I do know, as I said, that we have a lot of those workers living in Clackamas County. And a huge chunk of that $1.4 billion will be flowing into Clackamas County households and Clackamas County contractors and Clackamas County suppliers. And it's that piece that is important to me. And then finally, on the issue of going to a vote, I also am troubled with going to a vote if it has no meaning, because I think we run the risk of just being all the more annoying, because we have for people who don't agree, because now we have put it out to a vote, and if people say no, and then we go ahead because we've already decided we're going to go ahead, we've made a commitment, then people will say, well, why did you even ask me? And I think they would legitimately say that because it costs money to do an election. If we want to gauge the feelings of the electorate, there are many ways to do that without spending the money that an election involves. And or if we want to do an advisory vote, I would suggest an advisory vote on something that we could actually do, depending on the outcome of the advisory vote. But to have an advisory vote on something that we already know we're not going to act on seems disingenuous, shall we say. But with that, I also want to remind people that I was very impressed with the level of discourse today and the civil exchange. And it always strikes me that we have a lot more in common in terms of all of us wanting the same things. We do all want the best for the future of Clackamas County. And our goals are that we have a prosperous economy, that we have safe neighborhoods, clean air and water. These are things that all of us value in Clackamas County. And we may differ on how we're going to get there or how the specific details of how we want to achieve those things. But we hold a lot in common as Clackamas County residents, trying to do the best for our communities. And I think we have to give that to each other, that we're that assumption that we're all working towards those kind of goals. With that, I would not support going to a vote on this. I just think it's a disingenuous move on our part.
I think another key point that we haven't squarely addressed yet is the fact that in March of 2011, the project is hopefully going to go to a full faith funding agreement with the federal government. The whole project, the $1.4 billion project that's going to create 14,000 jobs. And what kind of signal does it send in terms of the steadfast commitment of the community partners with the federal government when they're deciding whether to execute a full faith funding agreement on this project? If one of the core partners is suddenly referring whether to do the project out to a vote of its community, there's something that reminds me of, and that is solo power. What happened when that community expressed deep ambivalence about whether or not to have those 450 jobs located in Wilsonville? The business partner decided to go somewhere else. I don't want to see the funding to support this $1.4 billion project that's going to create 14,000 jobs go somewhere else because of an advisory vote that is not going to change the fact that we have a contractual duty to fulfill our $25 million commitment.
Commissioner Bernard.
First, I'd like to say that I appreciate Pat Russell, Les Poole, all those people who did actually attend the Milwaukee, many of the Milwaukee meetings about light rail. I also appreciate the fact that Les Poole said it was 17 years of process. Also, I appreciate the newspapers for having these articles in the paper for the last 17 years about light rail. And I also would like to admit to something. And actually, Ed Zumwalt probably won't back me up on this. But I actually am very proud of the fact that Ed Zumwalt and I brought light rail back to the table. We did that because we were trying to save Milwaukee Junior High and purchased it. And we thought light rail would be an opportunity to get maybe Metro to come up with some dollars to help us buy the Milwaukee Junior High. Ed and I started a campaign to raise money to buy the junior high with the help of the city. But that didn't happen. So light rail stayed on the table. This was before I was mayor. In 1998, I stood up at a meeting and said, if light rail took out my business, I'd be happy to move. I'd be happy to move today, but it's not taking out my business. And yes, it's nearby. I have stated at 1,000 meetings, and people have accused me 1,000 times that this would have an impact on my business. And some say it'll increase the value. Some say it'll destroy the value. Which one is it? So am I to claim that light rail has increased the value of my business $100 million? Of course, it's nowhere near that. Or decrease the value to nothing? Which one is it? So do I say I need to state that there may be an economic impact on the business? What it is, I don't know. It's not out across my property. It's nearby. But I also live in Lake Oswego, and when we were looking at streetcar, we were talking about would that impact my value? I mean, I have a home that I rent in Lake Oswego. Would that increase the value of my home? I also own a home in Milwaukee. By the way, none of these can I sell in this market. And will that increase the value of my home 8 blocks away? I don't know. It may decrease the value, but I don't know that. So I am proud of the fact that in 2001, I was elected mayor of Milwaukee, always supporting light rail. I was reelected. I was reelected. I was reelected. I was elected county commissioner, and I was reelected county commissioner. What happens next time? I don't know. But I sit at a regional table. The other day I was thinking, this is a regional table of mostly business, large corporations, and some government entities, and it's called Greater Portland, Inc. And I was really worried that someone would look over at me and say, Mr. Bernard, what does Clackamas County mean to you? And I would have to really think hard, because all I've heard is no to support of our partners on the Selwood Bridge. I've heard no to light rail. I've heard no to urban renewal. I have heard many things about Clackamas County that do not make me proud. But I'm not about to say no to an agreement which is a contractual agreement, and to look back and ask them across that table, hey, we could use your help. Come to Clackamas County and build your business. Come to Clackamas County and buy the streetcars that Oregon Iron Work is building. You know, I just can't possibly face that, and I won't. You know, I've lived here my entire life. I've seen McLaughlin Boulevard decay. I've seen Milwaukee decay. And I decided to run for mayor at one point because I was tired of nothing happening. And thanks to what I perceive, you may not, that light rail may or may not be that incentive that inspires economic growth and job growth on the McLaughlin corridor. I hope it does, and I feel confident it will. But unless we in Clackamas County look to the future, fulfill our promises, what are we? How will I answer those people across the table and my fellow commissioners and other people and my people that I have made contracts with? A contract is a contract. I have said that from day one. I have believed it. My father, who I bought the business from, I had a contract. His father, who he bought the business from, he had a contract. If I were to say to Dad, by the way, I paid off the contract, Dad, I'm not going to pay you anymore, what would happen? Would he ever help me again? Would he take the business back? You bet he would. And I don't want people to take back their investments in Clackamas County. The other thing I heard, thanks to Les, is that after 17 years of process, I can't help but thank all those people who showed up today. Finally, where were you? Where were you all those years? And now suddenly it comes to the surface, somebody said, that, we have this deal. And I could name all the meetings, but I'm going to start November 20th, 2008, February 19th, 2009, June 2009, September 2009, January 21st, 2010, March 18th, 2010, June 18th, 2010, June 20th, 2011, June 16th, 2011. And that's just a portion of the ones that took place in the Park Avenue area. I guess that why do you start studying something if you're not going there? One minute we found out that it was going to go to Park Avenue, we started studying it. I mean, do we study it going to Oregon City? Do we start a committee to look at what Oregon City thinks about light rail coming? Well, folks, it ain't going there for a long time. I don't want to waste their time and the taxpayer times by a vision that someday in 2040 it might go there. So I think we have had a great process. And Les Poole and Pat Russell, they showed out at some of those meetings. But again, where were you? Where were you when we made the $25 million commitment? It wasn't just yesterday. And what happened in all those years? The other commissioners supported it. So I am proud to say that I'm going to vote no on my own motion. And because it is a good project, it has had outstanding outreach. And it is a commitment that I'm proud the County Commission did. And I'm proud that I was there and probably signed the $5 million agreement for Milwaukee to pay their share. So I'm up for $30 million.
Madam Chair, well, I know we've wandered quite a bit and came back. I just want to speak, and there's been some great testimony here today, and actually some great ideas, and actually some surprising testimony from some people that I had assumed or would be either for this and in some instances against this. I see some of my neighbors and 3 people here from my community that are sitting in the audience that have worked with me on the MAP 1 process, and I know they're really concerned about their community, my community, and that we want to see things change and see things get better in McLaughlin. But the concern I really have is, because I've really studied this, is that there's no guarantee. There's no guarantee that we're going to spend this money, the project's delivered, let's say, and that the economic benefit or the turnaround or the blight is going to be reversed. I don't know that. I've seen cases in Portland and around the region where, maybe in pockets of that, it's worked. But from end to end of the project, there are areas where it hasn't worked. And there's been areas where, frankly, nothing's happening. The last project, or the only project where we have light rail today, is the Green Line. And where it enters Clackamas County and where it terminates today, according to our staff who worked in that project, we haven't had a new business come in, and we haven't had new jobs, permanent jobs here because of it. And of course, it's all about permanent jobs to me. I think the temporary construction jobs are a part of our system. They're very important, and I would never want to undervalue that. But I would like, it's hard. I'm struggling because I'm not confident that we're going to see the benefits, and there's a lot of people out there that have high expectations that the community will see a great turnaround economically. And the fact that investors in the private sector are looking in different parts of Clackamas County, and they're not looking at McLaughlin, even though we try to point them that way, say, hey, look here, we got this great thing going on. Would you be interested? And as of date, that hasn't happened yet. Maybe it will. Maybe it'll happen tomorrow or the day after, and I hope so. I know that the economic situation today is maybe discouraging a lot of that, but that area has suffered a lot due to the construction of the town center and that urban renewal district. And it's just one of those situations that, from an access standpoint and from east-west traffic, and some of the people out in the McLaughlin area that have been to those meetings understand the challenges we face there. So I'd like to sit up here with a surety and think that for that $25 million, we're going to get a direct benefit. And I'm not confident, but yet I have to honor this contract because we've signed this. It preceded me. It's an obligation we have, and we're going to have to honor it. That's all there is to it. Now, Chair Lehan, I think she did raise a good point, and of course, Commissioner Bernard made the motion about a vote, and I talked about an advisory vote. We're deliberating. I think that's healthy and it's great. We can do a survey. We can do a number of things, but what do you get out of it after it's all done? And so I would still think that I still think there's value, whether it's an advisory vote or whether it is a survey. But I don't want Mr. Bernard to forget that 2-year void where a lot of the Clackamas County was not as actively engaged with their community as they were in Milwaukee.
Well, I guess I'd like to add a couple of things, and I think I tried to address your 2-year void by, it's only been a few years since light rail, actually, there was no alignment, and a few years ago we decided to move it to Park Avenue. So at the time, we weren't even sure if it was going to go down McLaughlin, Main Street, whether it was going to go to Clackamas Town Center. Once it was decided, immediately the process started. But I want to add one more thing. How long has the light rail been open at Clackamas Town Center? I think we're from a society of instant gratification. The light rail opens and all of a sudden huge buildings are going to be produced. I mean, this stuff takes time. This light rail line has been on the books for 17 years. And one of the things I experienced in downtown Milwaukee as mayor is there was a long time that light rail was coming down Main Street. And a lot of businesses said, well, why would I want to build a new building if it may be taken out by light rail? And there was one particular one that is there now, which I believe is the tallest building in Milwaukee, until we could assure them that it was not coming down down Main Street, that it wouldn't take out their building, and they built. So a lot of people are, because they're not sure when or if, our land use process alone takes how many months in the county? 6 months? So finally light rail comes, it's built, and then, okay, it's finally here. Now I can buy the land. Now I got 6 months. I got to hire an architect. All this stuff takes time. It's not an instant thing, and I think that's a perception that we all expect is instant gratification. And Clackamas, the one out in Clackamas Town Center has only been there a year and a half, 2 years?
Almost 2 years.
Almost 2 years. And I'd be amazed if a whole lot happened. Actually, there have been housing projects that have developed near Clackamas Town Center. I've been to one of the dedications, a senior facility. So it does take time, and 2 years is not that long. I would guess that light rail on McLaughlin would probably stimulate growth over a 20-year period.
And I would just add to that, that of course I wish there was a guarantee that this project, that any project, a road project, the Sunnyside project, I wish there was a guarantee that would say, if we just do this project, we will get huge amounts of private investment and jobs, private side jobs will come that will be permanent jobs. I would like to have that guarantee. But there is no such thing. There isn't. That guarantee doesn't exist on any public investment projects that we do. But there is a guarantee. I think the one thing you can assume there's a guarantee is if you do nothing, that it will stagnate. I mean, you know that with no investment, we see what happens. There has to be a public side investment and there has to be a private side investment. And if there isn't that investment, it continues to atrophy and go downhill. So we always do the best we can to get the best assurances that our investments will be positive, but there's no such thing as a guarantee, and I doubt there will be. Did you have any closing remarks, Commissioner Leininger? Good.
I would maybe ask Commissioner Bernard if he would amend his motion to make it a survey.
So to fund a survey? So not putting it on the ballot, but, well, I mean, I think that's something we could talk about as a survey about a lot of issues, and this could be one of them. So
I could support that if it was, but we need a more comprehensive discussion about what the survey is about.
I agree.
So that might be something we could talk about at a future work session if we want to do a community survey, and if so, what it would look like.
Right.
So my motion still stands, which I'm going to vote no on, and that is to put the $25 million on a ballot. But I would support funding a survey to be determined in the future.
With that, we'll discuss that one at a work session. Then I would call for the vote and say all those in favor of the current motion, which is to put this on the ballot to for the $25 million commitment, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
No.
I had to think that one out.
I know. No.
It was my effort to let you be the objective, insert the objective part in there, knowing that this obviously wasn't going to get voted on with any seriousness. I would like to see if we can't move the discussion to a survey.
Well,
yeah,
sometime soon.
I agree. We can. I think I'm always in favor of surveys that
I do just have
gauge
to make
the
a
different
quick
issues.
statement.
Yeah.
With seriousness, $25 million is a serious issue, and I think the vote was a serious vote. So, just to comment on that.
With that, we will move on. I know everyone is eager to go to lunch, but we still have business on the agenda, and that is we have the consent agenda before us, and I will ask the clerk and the county administrator to read the consent agenda by title only. Maybe the abbreviated version of the title.
Okay, under Health, Housing, and Human Services, a board order for approval of mental health director's designee to authorize a custody hold under ORS 426.233, approval of a lease agreement between Clackamas County Behavioral Health and EMC4 for lease and tenant improvements for the new crisis clinic, approval of a behavioral health service agreement with Wasco County Student Assistant Program for mental health services, approval of amendment number 2 to an intergovernmental agreement with the state of Oregon, Oregon Health Authority, Children, Adults, and Family Division for the provision of alcohol and drug case management services, approval of an agency service contract with Clackamas Women's Services for domestic violence prevention program services, approval of an intergovernmental revenue agreement with the state of Oregon, acting by and through its Department of Human Services for My Future, My Choice program services, approval of an intergovernmental revenue agreement with the state of Oregon, acting by and through its Oregon Commission on Children and Families for receipt of Healthy Start Medicaid funds, approval of a lease agreement between Clackamas County Community Health and Regency Center for lease and tenant improvements for the new primary care clinic, approval of an amendment number 1 to the intergovernmental agreement with the Oregon Health Authority for the provision of safe drinking water program, approval of an intergovernmental agreement with the State of Oregon Department of Human Services Senior Community Services Employment Program for specialized workforce services for seniors, and approval of an intergovernmental agreement with the Workforce Council of Clackamas County for specialized workforce services. A resolution appointing, this is under the Department of Transportation and Development, a resolution appointing Carl Clinton to the position of the county surveyor, approval of a contract with Kittleson and Associates for consulting services for Transportation System Plan Development 2011, approval of a contract with OTAC, Inc. for consulting engineer services for the Henry C. Road Stormwater Improvement Project.
And this is where I take over. We're under Business and Community Services. Approval of a cooperative intergovernmental agreement between Clackamas County and the City of West Lynn for capital contributions. Under the Department of Employee Services, approval of a contract renewal with Providence Health Plan for the 2011 plan year. Approval of the Oregon Dental Service contract endorsement for the 2011 plan year. Approval of the MetLife Group Insurance Certificate Rider for the 2011 plan year. Under elected officials, approval of previous business meeting minutes, approval of an intergovernmental agreement between Clackamas County Sheriff's Office and the Oregon State Marine Board for boat safety law enforcement services for fiscal year 2011-2012, approval of an intergovernmental agreement 11DA33 between Clackamas County District Attorney's Office and the State of Oregon Department of Justice. Under Technology Services, approval of the ORBMAP Intergovernmental Agreement contract number 2507 between Clackamas County and the State of Oregon Department of Revenue. Under Water Environment Services, approval of an intergovernmental agreement between Clackamas County Community Corrections Department and Clackamas County Service District Number 1, Tri-City Service District, and the Surface Water Management Agency of Clackamas County. Approval of a quitclaim deed on behalf of Clackamas County Service District Number 1 to Brian J. McCampbell and Lori McCampbell, grantees. Approval of a surface water and storm drainage easement on behalf of Clackamas County Service District Number 1. Acceptance of an easement on behalf of Clackamas County Service District Number 1 for the North Clackamas Revitalization Area Sanitary Sewer Project, Phase 3. That concludes our consent agenda.
I would ask for a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Madam Chair, I move that we approve the consent agenda.
I second.
Been moved and seconded that we approve the consent agenda. Is there any discussion on any of these many items which you can read more about online?
I've got about an hour.
Just kidding. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Passes 4-0. And that brings us to Commissioner Communication. I'm hoping we don't really have any, but I do have one that I need to announce. This is an important announcement I've been asked to read. Phase 2 of the Beaver Creek paving project will begin Tuesday, August 9th and run through Tuesday, August 16th. Since the paving will be done in the area from Warner Milne to just east of Library Court, there will be some traffic delays for employees and the public traveling to the Red Soils campus. Please use caution when driving in the area. You can find a schedule and potential traffic impacts on our website, and you see it on your TV screen. With that, I believe our business is concluded. Oops. Commissioner Savas?
I just want to say thank you to my fellow commissioners and staff for being patient today and listening to all the testimony and giving everyone an opportunity to speak. And and again, the consideration for that, so thank you.
Likewise. Then we are adjourned.